Good morning and good day to everyone. Good to see yous. Henrik, how are you, mate? Good to see you. Deborah, very, very excitable. Deborah, and g'day, Lukey. Oh, well, we're getting the stragglers coming in. Probably going, it's a live stream. What happened? G'day, Yari. Did it? Did I put 28? Oops. God. Let's just see. I'm definitely sure I put 29, but now you got me thinking. Did I or didn't I? Maybe I did a boo-boo. Harry did a boo-boo. No, 29. There it is, mate. See, 29. There it is. Live stream, 29th of May. Don't know what you're reading. That's just on the header. That's for Saturday in North America and Sunday for the rest of the world. So the Americas, 28, because it's their evening at the moment. Remember, we do live in a circular world that rotates on an axis. So, yes. Nope. Got me thinking whether I did a boo-boo or not. I was worried for a sec. Let me just zoom out again so get my proportionality stuff sorted in that way. Anyway, let's move on. Oh, okay. I'm with you. Was there a stream yesterday? No. God, I am rusty. God. Oh, shit. G'day, Tracy. She's picking up bad habits from that cave bloke from Kiwi land. Can't even spell my name properly. The regularly scheduled Greek Carnival Science Man show. Anyway. I thought it was. That's it. The Americas. Thoughts on turmeric for inflammation, other menopausal symptoms, not required, my dear. Doesn't do any of that sort of stuff. Well, by affecting certain pathways, it sort of creates a sort of hormetic sort of effect, sort of has more of a hermetic effect than anything else. Yes, it does actually affect some of the inflammatory pathways, but it's so minor. If you're doing a whole lot of wrong things, it's not going to help much at all. And it also basically, as long as you get rid of all the inflammatory stuff that you're putting in your mouth, you're not going to require any of that sort of stuff. And it is a chelator of minerals as well. So, if you use turmeric, excessively, a bit, it's not going to, for flavoring, it's not going to be a major issue. But if you do like excessively, it is an iron chelator and can cause subclinical levels of anemia in some people, depending on the dose and all that. So no, you don't want those chelating agents in your body. But a bit for flavor, I have used it even myself for a bit of flavor. That's one thing, but excessive amounts like some people use, nope. Fitness compilation, woohoo! Yes, woohoo! Yes, he's back. He's back. Good to see Adrian. Oh, doesn't matter, Gary. We all I make constant mistakes. So I'm the last person to basically living in a glass house to basically throw rocks at anyone. So taurine alone is not addressing my issue. This is new. Okay. Well, those substances aren't going to address your issue as well. You really have to basically look at everything you do, what you're actually putting in your body, environmental factors. Has anything changed in your environment? You've got to look at all these aspects to basically try and pin down certain things. Because yes, the food plays a big important role in general health, but there are pre-existing conditions, there are pre-existing ailments that need to be, with certain dosages of certain things in certain ways to sort things. Yeah, but I did notice your other comment, curry, yummy. Yeah, exactly. So you're just trying to justify it, aren't you? Be truthful. But, if you enjoy it, use some. I mean, I have to say I used to love curries as well. I've sort of cut back on them. I do use Bombay curry and Madrasa curries, which are my two favorite. And nowadays I just use a bit of sprinkling of those. So that's all on certain things, like when I'm doing certain, like a soup or stuff like that for flavor. But yes, be honest with yourself. HD. Yeah, everything's fine, not a problem. Just other people in the family, other issues, other stuff. Even tomorrow I've got to do a couple of things for someone else. Anyway, that's another story, which is private. But yeah, I'm fine, no issues. And I had those little issues, as you guys remember, with my COVID experience, sort of not long haulers or anything like that, but just basically that little, thing in the back of my throat, sort of. But that irritation sort of lasted for about a week or so and then died off. So I'm back to normal now. So but I actually did get the flu as well. And actually it was worse. It knocked me out. I actually had to take days off from work. That's how bad it got me. But I know why it happened, because the flu actually is mutating continuously. It's, like all these sort of highly mutagenic type, like the common cold, all these mutate quite a bit. And as a consequence, we haven't been exposed now. Normally would be in close contact with people in work, in, just in the city and all that, and would be exchanging continuously. It's like doctors, they hardly ever get sick. Have you noticed? But they are in constant contact with low grade levels of bacteria, viruses. So they'll get a bit of this strain, a bit of that strain, and these strains also compete. So no one becomes dominant in the system to overwhelm the system. And so what happens is, because they're actually, kept in check by their own competition in an organism, the organism is able to basically, with that lower amount, this is my theorizing, is able to knock it all out. And that's why doctors basically have better immunity to viruses as a consequence, especially these sort of common viruses that go around all the time. We haven't been exposed for some time because of the restrictions, and now it's come back with a lot of mutations, a lot of changes, which is a bit different compared to what the body remembered. And so it got a foothold before my body could basically deal with it. And so it knocked me about for 2 days, but not severely. Other people have been out for a whole week at work, where for me it was 2 days, and it was just more gut issues. Remember I told you I've got that norovirus genetics, that whenever I get a virus, it hits me in the gut, and really hit me bad in the gut. I had some flu-like symptoms and some sneezing and stuff like that, but yeah, and the symptoms were worse than the gut and the sort of the general, compared to COVID, the Omicron variant, which I suspect I got. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. That's it never got checked. Just what I got from Dad. So yeah, it's interesting. Let's put it that way. But that's probably the reason why some people are being hit much harder by the flu than the Omicron in comparison. But still interesting. These sort of things. So I've always said that that the C19 was no different than a bad flu season. And that British data, which I've done a video on British data on the past flu, and the data from 2020 and 2021, people that actually died from the actual C19, not from other causes with C19. Yes. So, Harry, do you have any evidence of lectin damaging the intestinal system or creating intestinal permeability? Thank you. Not on my hand right now to show you, but yes, there is evidence that things like gluten and stuff like that, there's shitloads of literature showing that quite clearly. So, but I'm not going to go racing away chasing it for you. There's plenty of others that have actually, in the carnivore community and in the low carb community, that have actually done videos on that. All you have to do is just Google and look for the ones that have actually showing scientific research and mechanistic studies and biopsies, where they've actually done actual physical biopsies to see those things. Yeah, but they do exist, and there are child ones as well, which are very important, because the child ones, when kids, because basically for 4 to 6 months, they're on breast milk. They should be on longer, but that's another thing altogether. And then they're sort of weaned off into other foods and stuff like that, weaned onto certain other foods, and that's when we do see some of these problems, especially when they're plants, that there are some gut damage and stuff like that. And we've got evidence where endoscopy. My cousin is also an endoscopy specialist at a hospital in New South Wales. So he's a researcher, and he's top of his profession. So I do know a bit background on these sort of things, but obviously I'm not going to provide his identity or stuff like that, because that's privileged. So, but yes, there is plenty of evidence out there for that sort of stuff. But the thing is, we've been exposed to small grade lectins, because if we go back in history, we did consume about, for quite a few hundreds of years, 2/3 animal foods and seasonal plant foods. So about a third of our diet came from plants, sometimes more, sometimes less. And those populations that actually had bigger intakes had more problems. And we know that from the Egyptian data, that even without refined sugars, they had cardiovascular disease. But outside that sort of thing, which is sort of mimicking the modern diet of mostly plants and less animal foods and the problems. But the actual, with the lectin research, if you go back historically, it was less of a problem. And the reason for that is because people were consuming raw milk, and raw milk has a thing called lactoferrin. And lactoferrin in the milk binds lectins. Got it? The other thing is, they used to prepare the foods that had these anti-nutrients in a way where they used to ferment them. They used to basically, allow them to, break down their anti-nutrients, like the sort of soaking and stuff like that they used to do traditionally, how they used to prepare these. We don't do it anymore, but they used to. Lowering the threshold of these things, then adding the the sort of the milk dairy products, into those meals and pretty much neutralizing the effects. Now, even with pasteurized milk, there will be a bit of lactoferrin, but it's heavily reduced. And depending on the temperature, if it's ultra high, it's all destroyed. But if it's sort of lower temperature, you can get some that survives. But still, it's a problem in the way that our food supply is provided now. There's no soaking, there's no fermenting, there's none of this sort of stuff where we actually lower the threshold. It's speed, get it out there, get it quick, produce it quick. And so the threshold of lectins in the diet now are much higher than what they used to be traditionally. So that's another issue in itself. But yes, they are involved in some of that. But it's not only that. There are other factors as well. There are other inflammatory sort of things that cause gut permeability. Also, Adrian, like a vitamin D and taurine in the diet. So you in the past, people were outside workers, not indoor workers like we are in the last couple of decades. They had better vitamin D status. Vitamin D is important for tight junctions. Also, taurine is important for tight junctions. Our food supply was 2/3 animal foods, 1/3 plants, because we didn't have any refrigeration. So we couldn't store for long periods of time a lot of plant foods. So we had them only seasonally. So our primary foods were dairy and meats and seafood. We consumed something like 10 times the seafood we consume today. So it was a completely different diet, even a couple of decades ago. So those are the reasons why today it's very different. The food supply is more processed. There's a lot of factors, that are causing inflammation and stuff like that, but also nutrients that are not coming in because of the processing of the food that's actually making people more susceptible to permeability. So it's a lot of factors. But anyway, that's for another video, another time. Yes, it is. Depression is definitely. How many people that I've actually put on taurine supplementation and their anxiety and depressive effects go away. Look at bipolar, Amber O'Hearn, went full carnivore, mostly rawish, which means she's getting more taurine. Remember, it affects GABA-A. It's, the literature is just full of how these animal nutrients are so important for dealing with, choline is very important, acetylcholine, neurotransmitter, all these sort of things. So animal foods are very important for proper functioning of the brain. So yes, definitely. And little drugs and tablets aren't going to fix it. They're just going to mask it or manage it. G'day, Gary. There's a deal of vitamin A toxicity. I stopped liver. What's the deal with? But is it okay for dogs? Yes, it definitely is. Or will it cause toxicity? No. Look, let me put it this way. Whether it's a dog, cat, human, anyone, vitamin A toxicity can happen under certain circumstances. Either your vitamin D status is very low, but the primary reason for it is liver problems, liver damage, detoxification, poor detoxification, genetics. Some people have poor genetics in detoxifying, and they end up with more fibrosis over time as they get older. You're more susceptible as you get older as well. So your liver, if you've got a very healthy liver, your liver can store quite a bit of retinol. But if it's not healthy, that's a different ball game. That's why when people come to the carnivore diet, I don't recommend, if you're eating eggs, you're eating, muscle meats with the fat on it and all that, you should be getting, fairly decent amounts of vitamin A that you don't need to eat liver. Okay. Now, there are people like myself that have got certain genetics that require it. There are certain people that basically, like the Irish, that have basically got genetics that require it as well. So that require, retinol and are not very good at converting carotenoids. But do we require massive amounts? No. But we still do require, and it will vary between populations. Most people, muscle meat and the fat from the muscle meat and some dairy fat and all that, they'll get enough, and eggs, they'll get enough retinol that they need. They don't need to consume liver. Liver's not a requirement. I consume it, but it only once a week. And the only reason I do that is because I've got certain genetics. But I don't recommend it generally. I've said that multiple times. I don't know why it's not getting out there that I don't recommend liver unless you've got certain genetics and you require it, and you've got very low status, and you've actually tested and you know you've got low status. People coming from a vegan or a vegetarian diet that have basically, especially that have got those sort of genes, may need to do liver for a couple of months to get their retinol status up. But before they do it, I usually recommend that they first fix their liver with choline and stuff like that to export fat, and taurine to fix the fibrosis that they may have in their liver. Make sure that their liver is healthy before they start trying to rebuild their lost nutrient levels. So it's all nuanced. It's not just sort of yes, no type thing that everybody wants an answer or says, yes, I need it. Listen to your body. Your body usually tells you. You usually get cravings for things. You all of a sudden have a craving for certain fish. I had, which means maybe I'm not getting enough, DHA in my diet. So, all these sort of things, it's really listening to your body. It's I think we over micromanage ourselves on the carnivore diet. So yeah, I really limit certain things that I do, and I only do certain things where they really are required. So I don't know the guy HD. I have no idea about the guy, But to get basically, I would address. I don't know whether these people are looking at liver health, because retinol storage capacity is very high in a healthy liver. So it's very hard to get into toxicity levels if you've got a really healthy liver. Problem is, most modern people don't. Most modern people basically have gone through years and years of derangements of inappropriate foods, have done a lot of damage to their liver. And even if you go on a carnivore diet for a couple of years, you can still have quite a lot of damage that hasn't been resolved. Also mitochondrial damage, so mitochondrial efficiency. You still need energy to basically be able to store stuff in that organ. So there's a lot of factors at play. So yes, it can be confusing. That's true. So it's not a straightforward thing, and it's going to be slightly individual for people due to genetics and a whole lot of factors, and I've sort of discussed that before in some detail. Now, let's see what Lukey's got for me. He's always got something to entertain me. Thanks, mate. Let me share my screen. Taurine, quantum biology, ice cream, 5-hour live streams. I like the ice cream one. It's probably my favorite one, this one. Says a lot about my behavior. Yes, a child at heart. My mother's sister had ovarian issues, or perhaps cancer. Well, the word perhaps means a lot of things. It's either you've got it or you don't. Let's be quite clear about that. You may have precancerous lesions. That's or certain growths which may be benign. I recall it being said that she needs to go on chemo potentially. Well, that's a quick run from you may have something, and yes, we're going to put you into chemo. So that's I think of putting her on therapeutic keto and of course some senolytics. Yes, and taurine. Taurine is very important. So, and in particular, if she does, because you can't control your mother, what she's, my mother's sister. You can't control her, what she's going to do. You can't control, well, unless you're a part of the elite, HD, which I don't know. But yes, you can't control other humans generally, what they're going to decide to do. So chemotherapy, I've actually done some video, one of my early, I think, cancer videos covered the importance of high doses of taurine as a chemoprotective. It sort of protects the healthy cells from the damaging effects of chemotherapy. So really important, and increases apoptotic effect on the cancer cells. So, telling them to die off. So, yeah. So obviously therapeutic ketosis would be a good idea. Senolytics would be a good idea, and taurine would definitely be a good idea as well. She's overseas in Ethiopia, so it's a tough one, but things are rather vague for now. Fair enough. Yep. Yeah, look, the problem is a lot of people, the kibble culture has, these people would have traditionally consumed camel, goat, stuff like that, milk. Now and sheep's milk and these animal products, and now they're consuming a lot of kibble in the cities and all that. It's like the Maasai that live in Nairobi, tribal areas, not an issue. In Nairobi, they're eating a lot of kibble and processed foods and stuff like that. They have been since the 20s, very early, from the early colonial days. It's just got worse, so, this kibble stuff was around in these sort of societies from way back. Weston A. Price, actually, when he went around the world to different parts, he saw this stuff. So it's not as if, seed oils and refined sugars and stuff like that have been recent. No, they've been around for quite some time, but in less quantities. And they were more concentrated like in cities, where, especially when you're looking at parts of Africa and colonial, obviously, I know that Ethiopia was not, the Italians tried to colonize it a couple of times, but failed. But at the end of the day, they were, allied at the time to the British. And as a consequence, they also traded with them, and they had a lot of different foods of that sort that had come into their cities. And so that it's been around for some time amongst those populations, unfortunately. So, yeah. Remember what I said? That's just a short-term thing. Yeah, probably a good idea. And do it quick, because I'm going to put a stop to email so I can catch up. So, because I'll make a channel decision that I'll prioritize Tracy anyway, because yes, anyway, we're good friends. So that's the thing, and I can do whatever I like. It's my channel, so just the way it goes. Yes, send me a yes HD. Perhaps look, that's for normalizing hormones, and that's a short-term protocol for about 3 months, maybe 6 months, and you have to come right down to 3 milligrams. So you've got to be very careful with that. We don't want to cause other issues in that regard. G'day, Lukey.
Hello, Harry. Nice to be back.
Yes. G'day, Jared. Post-workout sauna, Harry. So somebody's enjoying themselves. Sauna, and God, living the good life. Living the good life.
He has those nice mineral waters for when he goes in the sauna.
Yeah, exactly. He's the sexiest man in Brazil. Yes, he's joining. He just did. There you go. See, your request. You asked for it. You got it, Phoenix. Haven't had curry in years. Love it through. Yeah, me too. I mean, I've still got actually my drawer. I've still got the old Bombay and the Madrasa curry stuff, probably should throw it out because probably that old now. It's been in there for a couple of years. It's right at the back. I probably should remove it and throw it out. But yes, I did used to do quite a lot of curries in that regard. Yes, I know what you mean. Paul Mason mentioned Western A Price observations that the Maasai had a higher rate of rheumatoid arthritis than neighbouring tribes, attributed it to the dairy consumption. I don't know, mate. I have no idea. So, because this is the first I've heard about it.
Yeah, so this is Dr. Paul Mason's hypothesis on this,
Yeah,
no one
that's
knows
a hypothesis, exactly. And the other thing is, there were some studies that were done, but not people in the tribal areas. These people were done in the cities like Nairobi in Kenya, the capital. They don't do a pure ancestral diet. They pretty much also include some kibble in their diet and seed oils. So you've got confounding variables in observational research. So, I take it with a grain of salt. And you've also got people that are indoors and will have less exposure to vitamin D. And we know that from the young children that come back that have certain gut issues, as even Mary had noticed amongst the Maasai kids that were coming back from the schools and were indoors and eating kibble, plus not, because if you're dark skinned, you've got to be out in the sun for many hours to be able to get sufficient levels. So there's a lot of confounding variables, and so we've got to be very careful how we treat that sort of data and making pronouncements, or because we know that there are a whole lot of other populations like in the French Alps, in the Swiss Alps, and a number of other parts of the world where people consumed and also consumed lectin foods like some sort of the old traditional breads,
rye breads and stuff.
Yeah, and rye breads and all that did not have any of these issues. So all I need to show is one study with an inverse correlation that nullifies that, because the Bradford-Hill criteria says that you should always get some level of association if there is a causality behind it.
No, yes, and that's what I've been thinking about, because you can look at populations that have like really high dairy intake and you don't get them like a proportional increase in like incidence of
exactly.
So I'd say it's still in the air. So
I would say it's a bust, because the moment you've got only one, because associations basically indicate there's a relationship. It doesn't mean it's causality. You need to do proper research to prove causality. But in every single study that's been done on tobacco, there was always some sort of level of inference of differing strengths, always, on the negative effects to the lungs. But when you have an inverse relationship, that means the opposite. You don't see that at all. It's a bust. It's a bust, really. So that's why I don't subscribe to. I don't buy it, in a sense, you could say, because it doesn't fulfill the Bradford-Hill criteria, and there's an inverse relationship.
Perfect.
And then you'd have to prove what is actually driving it as well. Yes. Another lover of dairy, like myself. Yeah.
I just have to say, Harry, I'm really surprised at how much fat I actually need, because I've been gorging on it recently and I don't really seem to get fatter. It's strange, really.
Well, you're listening to your body, and your energy needs are higher, so you're consuming. So you're responding to your body. As I said to people, but you have to listen to your body. We've lost the ability to listen to our bodies because we're listening to cravings. Traditionally, we've grown up with cravings because of inappropriate foods. And so we have these problems. I mean, Pim's dealing with a lot of people with a lot of craving issues and stuff like that, that are struggling because they can't get their mindset. They're struggling to do a reset. And it's not easy because you've got all these addictive pathways like smoking that have been sensitized, and it takes months sometimes to desensitize these pathways. It's not a straightforward thing. You need coaching and you need somebody to keep you in line. I remember when I stopped smoking, I did it with a mate. And I did it because we both were doing it and keeping each other honest and pushing each other to keep off the smokes. So that's how we achieved it. Had I hadn't, without me pushing Sean and Sean pushing me, I would have probably gone back to the smoking. So, yeah. And even occasionally I've had, gone and had a cigar in a social occasion. And I mean, bloody hell. I mean, we had one guy from a friend of ours from Thailand. He's a wealthy guy from over there. He came over and brought us in a hermetically sealed, only he would basically. His mum's a general in the army over there. And he brought this little container of Cuban cigars.
Oh,
don't know how he got them through customs. I don't want to know either. I don't want to know either. And
that's not for us to know.
Exactly. They were nice. They were really bloody nice. And so, yeah. And I smoked a full cigar, but I didn't become addicted again. You got to do it continuously to rebuild an addiction. But getting off, you've got to sort of wean yourself off. So one cheat after many years isn't going to basically make you a chain smoker again. But if you're doing it constantly, multiple cheats, obviously going to fall off the wagon and go back to addictions. So every second day, I'm just having a bit of a cheat. Yeah, or same thing. Anyway, let's see what General Jane said. Several weeks ago, I asked about if my tumor could be cancer. I've been diagnosed and started treatment. They encourage that I have it highly treated and curable. I will be okay. I can't give you medical advice, as you know. I could get deplatformed if I did. I'm not a medical person, all that, but I have done videos on cancer. There's an entire repertoire of actual research. So if you do go down the chemo way, make sure you're on very high doses of taurine to basically to protect your other cells, your healthy cells, and some senolytics and other things that can actually mitigate and kill off all that. Which way you go is your decision. You need to make that choice because you have to live with that decision. I would definitely say that being in a very highly ketotic state would be a very good thing, especially in the early stages. And I would also say that switching to fat oxidation and considering the deuterium depletion protocol stuff that I've done in some of that video and information that I've provided, I would look into all that sort of stuff. I think you really need to carefully look at that stuff and embrace it, that knowledge. If you want to discuss it with your doctor, take those research papers and incorporate it into your protocol that you do with the doctor. But at the end of the day, you have to live with the consequences. There are risks with chemotherapy because you can cause a lot of damage to the immune system. There are ways of resetting the immune system, which is 3-day fasts and then basically vitamin D and taurine levels up in order to rebuild a healthy immune system again. So there are ways of mitigating some of the destructive, effects of these things and proper nutrients. So there's a lot of this sort of stuff. I've done videos. There's a whole playlist called Cancer. Go and check it out. I need to add a few more other things to it as well, which are in folders that I haven't done yet, but they are coming. Anyway, let's move on. I'm a bit allergic today for unknown reasons. What have you been sniffing? Or who have you been sniffing?
I did have to go to the office yesterday, so who knows? Could be anything.
And what was her name that you were sniffing?
Come on. Yeah, I am sensitive to fragrance, but I didn't sniff anyone.
There you go. So it was probably somebody in the office. Gary, Paul Mason is a good source of it. It definitely is. But a lectin in wheat stimulates zonulin production, which regulates the intestinal tight junctions. Yep. Look, as I said, some of these people in these tribal areas, they do not actually consume anything with a lectin in it. But people in Nairobi, where a lot of these studies do get done, even one of the studies where they were looking at the corpses of Maasai, they were in Nairobi, they weren't in the tribal areas. So, as I said, again, confounded research. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality that there is, confounded variables out there and stuff that this is what causes a lot of the problems when we look at research, as Bart would say, without a critical eye. And we just, I pretty much, when it comes to observational epidemiology, the moment I look at an observational epidemiology study, anyone, whenever they say they've adjusted an observation, that's fabrication. Whenever they've basically made pronouncements where the odds ratios, they call them the risk ratios, but I call them the odds ratios, are very low, I will consider that basically conclusions that are basically propaganda in that regard. But most epidemiological studies and most studies out there are adjusted. You will not see a physicist take a measurement of a pulsar and then adjust it. That's fabrication. That's unscientific. That's pseudoscience. This is what these people are involved in. Unfortunately, sometimes even people within the carnivore community sometimes are looking at research that they shouldn't be looking at and should be ignoring it because it's adjusted nonsense, as Bart has quite clearly pointed out to all of us and explained how this is done, and how we've had the wool pulled over our heads for a long, long time. Because even myself, I was looking at, randomized control and mechanistic studies, and I say, well, they don't match that other stuff. And so I realized that there was problems with this. I just considered it that it's associational. Association does not mean causation. So I considered it basically poor research. But so I had a negative view towards that research. That became more pronounced after I met Bart, because then I realized that he was a statistician that was pulling it all apart and saying they've done this, they've done that, they've altered this, they've adjusted that. And I'm going, they've actually fabricated. You're right. They're actually fabricating outcome statistics based on observations they never made. They've modified those observations, those arseholes. They basically are lying. And then I realized it's not just basically associational, it's junk. It's garbage excrement of the highest quality of excrement. It's academic excrement. Let's not forget. So, yeah, my attitudes towards those sort of studies basically went rock bottom. I realized it was garbage. So I pretty much now look at mechanistic studies, but also with mechanistic studies, they are reductionist in nature. And so you have to take them with a bit of a grain of salt. I do use occasionally mechanistic studies for taurine and other things and all that, and as you guys know. But at the same time, I'm not basically, I say, well, this is in this species, because you can't do those experiments in humans. But there are anecdotes with a lot of my subscribers and other people, and we see it that it is, if you look at the literature, when we look at the child stages, if you give a child, you keep them on breast milk, you don't see any of the sort of problems. The moment you wean them off into any plants in particular, you start seeing a lot of problems appear, both the regular sort of gut issues, but also rare sort of disorders as well that we're seeing. And I suspect that's the sort of Pottinger cat effect, these rare disorders, multiple generations of the same bullshit that are causing a lot of more related issues. But yeah, even some of these intestinal issues and certain problems, gut issues and all that people, you could actually get a child. There was actually one research. What did they do? I think they actually baked the eggs, and they baked the eggs and the dairy. They baked it, so they weren't, like warming it up or cooking it, or it's certain other. They actually baked it, just baked it. This was an experiment, and what they noticed was that the child had less reactivity to the baked versions of dairy and the baked versions of eggs, which was really bloody interesting in that regard. They don't know exactly why. So let's put that aside, because
Yes.
this is just research, but they haven't worked out why this is happening. I don't know what baking is doing to alter it. Now, we know that when you cook it, like traditionally societies would have cooked stuff, it's like you're baking it in a sense. You're not frying it, you're not boiling it, you're not doing other things like that. You're not having it raw or anything like that. You're having it cooked in that regard. I don't know what it's doing to the proteins. Maybe it actually is accelerating the denature, which means that when it gets into the stomach, it doesn't need to do as much denaturing, because that's what the stomach does with the acids in the stomach. It basically denatures proteins into amino acids. It breaks them down. So it denatures the proteins, which means that they no longer are foreign reactive proteins. And maybe that's what's happening with the baking process. It's denaturing them, then the stomach is denaturing them further. And as a consequence, that's why everybody gets concerned about denaturing proteins. Yes, you do not want actual foreign proteins in your body for your immune system to react. Now, yeah, so basically, I think it may be that sort of, this is speculation on my part. We need more research in that regard. So I'm still, up in the air about that. Let me save my image.
No, but this is something that constantly bothers me. Like, people are talking about all the peptides and things. Oh, the beta A1 casing, and it's like, yeah, sure, that may be an issue if, like, you don't have enough proteases, if your gut is leaky. But
yeah,
look,
exactly.
I've had liters of like A1 milk, and I
Yeah,
don't get
but,
mucus, I don't
yeah,
get acne.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. But you've got good levels of taurine.
yeah.
You've got good levels of sunlight and vitamin D. You've got tight junctions, not an issue.
Mhm.
So, but even we know that basically, even if you put a child and give them, like goat's milk in particular, which is close to human milk,
Yes.
I've discussed that before. You don't get that reactivity. So, yeah, look, I think it's the way we prepare things is very different than the past as well. So
Yes.
I probably need to go back and remind myself, because about some of the ways we used to cook things and prepare things and stuff like that, and look at some of that, do a bit of a background reminder for my own self. I talk about it, but, and probably help a bit in that regard. But anyway, let's move on. So, hi, Harry. And what would be a protocol to prevent hair loss? I've been struggling with it lately while eating carnivore, and I'm not sure what could be causing it. Okay. The things that actually will improve your hair thickness is if you're getting enough protein. If you're not getting enough protein, that can be a problem. The other one is biotin. Are you getting enough biotin in your diet? Biotin is really important and all that. And sulfur amino acids, you could have, when you go full carnivore, you can actually have like low-grade oxalate dumping. Some people will oxalate dump into their urine via their kidneys, and they will know that they're dumping. Some people will dump through their feces. It's genetics, and they won't really know that they're dumping. And as a consequence, they may be reducing their level of sulfur amino acids in their body. Reducing sulfur amino acids are very important for keratin. That means the binding of keratin. Your nails, your hair, very important. So another way of actually doing it is supplementing MSM, sulfur, and taurine, just in case you do have this sort of oxalate issue as well. So it could be other issues, as I said, to sort of, or maybe nutrients that you're not getting enough because you're eating certain types. A lot of people, I had one person that actually was eating butter with beef jerky all the time and was missing a number of important nutrients because of the beef jerky. While it's enjoyable, it is devoid of taurine, a number of other things. And so they weren't getting enough of certain nutrients. Once they went back to regular meat, all the problems resolved. So yeah, so you've got to be, I don't know what people are doing. They tell me, oh, I've been doing this, but what exactly do you mean by I'm doing this? Is the other thing. So Berserk, just give a try, getting some more eggs into your diet, because they're a very good source of biotin. So, and that will help thicken your hair, and also things like that. So yes, that's the sort of stuff that I get, and I work against my own genetics because I've got a genetic predisposition, which I've actually shown other people. Harry, I've heard certain overtrained fasted. Some people say it can promote excessive increasing cortisol, long-term leptin resistance. Are these real concerns? Leptin depends, but definitely cortisol. Yes, you can get from too much stress on the body. You can get excess cortisol levels. On a carnivore diet, if you're getting enough taurine does normalize cortisol. It does bring down cortisol. So, and also sodium as well brings down, so will bring down cortisol as well levels. So if you're not getting enough sodium, that can be an issue as well. And if you're overtraining, you may be losing a lot of salt. Some people dump more salt than others. I suspect it's probably the salt more than the taurine, the lack of taurine in these sort of overtraining people. Probably where the taurine would be playing a helpful role is by managing the electrolytes much better in these people. But it's really, I would say, the overtraining, which some people are more. I'm one of those people that really dump a lot of sodium. I can lose a lot of sodium, and it can end up with heart palpitations and all that sort of stuff. It happened to me in the tropics, and I'm about twice. So I literally had to get out of bed and go down and ask for a whole lot of salt. And once I had a whole lot of salt in me, my heart rate came down to normal. I was fine. So I just hadn't salted anything throughout the whole day, and I was sort of drinking a lot of those bottled waters and all that, and then ended up, because I've got those conditions where I dump quite more. And then at the same time, I wasn't on an ancestral diet as well, which wouldn't have helped as well. So yeah, it's probably, there's a lot of things that I was doing wrong. Let's put it that way.
It was so nice last summer. I noticed that I don't need to drink like huge amounts of fluids just to feel okay, which used to be the case for me.
I'd wager if you don't feel flat while training fasted, then it isn't a problem.
Yeah, look, I saw a few people posting about this because they say it's really bad, especially like if you have things like adrenal fatigue or thyroid disease, because the cortisol influences a lot, but honestly, I feel okay training fasted, so I'm just going to continue.
Oh, look, don't overdo the training, as Bart
Yes,
would say. Don't overdo the training. You need to your body still needs to recover.
absolutely.
So
Yeah, I learned
and
that
you're not going to get you won't get any additional benefit. I know sometimes people think that I'm going to get from more. You don't, because you're tearing down the body, because the body goes through cycles of tearing down and rebuilding, tearing down and rebuilding. If you're tearing constantly, you can't rebuild. So, overtraining is contraindicated, as Bart would say, and he's right. It's not a very healthy thing to do. His latest video that he did, I actually watched it. It's really bloody good.
Yes.
You know, the one that he puts up all his studies as well. I've been sharing it around, puts up all his studies and stuff like that, that information, because he's talked about it in the past, but he's never put up the, you know, I've been aware of his studies, but he's never been, you know, in none of his videos has he clearly explained it, you know, in the more simple terms, because he's done some academic-y type videos, which for most people are probably difficult, but at least he's put up the studies for people that really want to nerd out on that information. But on the other stuff, he's also, you know, really explained it properly in a more, he's sort of laid it out in a much better way compared to his previous video on the same subject. So I think it's a good video for people to go and check out. They'll get a lot of insights in things of sports physiology, because that was his, you know, his core stuff. That's why sometimes people come and ask me, I know a bit about sports physiology, but, you know, no, I'm not an expert. You know, the person you really, you know, I've focused more because of my own health issues, more on, you know, general physiology, nutrition, deuterium, light, you know, grounding, all these other things that can actually help improve the functioning of the human body, and nutrients and key nutrients that we require, and genetics, that variations that exist between population groups to basically tease out, you know, different approaches for different people and why certain people may be responding in a certain way or not. But when it comes to physiology, Bart's definitely the man on that. He really knows his shit. And he really understands how, and the good thing is he's really explained it so well of how holistically the body works, because this is really what it is. You know, it's like people, they constantly, you know, I noticed a couple of people asking questions like, does it, you know, does lactate go back? Well, lactate can do a lot of things. It can go down the polyol pathway, go down the Cori pathway. It can also be converted directly back to pyruvate and go down, you know, through the Krebs cycle, the you know, as a COA. So it really depends on a whole lot of. This is how we understand physiology. It's a complex interaction of hormones, nutrients, and many other things that will push things in one direction or another. It's a dynamic system. And that's the nice thing that I like about Bart. He understands that. He's always understood that. It's the reason why he rails against reductionism in academia, and the reason why I do it as well, because I've always viewed as something, as a, maybe because I come from a computer background, but I view things as a systems sort of interaction of multiple parts of, you know, it's not basically just one procedure, one part that's actually in play. It's a lot of different things interplaying with each other. And you may write a code out in a certain way and not consider certain things, and it will actually crash because it hasn't interacted appropriately with something else, because you didn't, you know, correctly write the sort of the code in an area where it should interact. If such happens, this should interact with this procedure or function within the code. So, I mean, that's how the body is also, but in a much more sophisticated way. All these different parts are moving continuously, or in continuous dynamic activity. You know, that's what a living organism is. And Bart understands that, and that's why, you know, he can explain things certain. And I sometimes we all fall into a bit of reductionism, like trying to explain something to other people that don't understand things. But then I always try and remind people that it is far more complicated than that. There are all these other interactions and stuff like that are happening, you know. So I think that's, you know, like the recent one where Julian Ryder came in and was making stupid assumptions. Well, mate, you know, lactate can go all the way back to pyruvate, you know, pyruvate dehydrogenase, convert it, you know, back to pyruvate, and then into the Krebs cycle as a COA, you know. So what are you talking about? Or it can go down the Cori cycle. It can go down the polyo pathway and end up as fructose even. You know, it can do a lot of things in the body. And then that fat can also be stored and then reused. That's what a dynamic system does. But it depends on a whole lot of things. This sort of nonsense that I need to eat, this reductionist, I need to get my glucose, that you're starving yourself from glucose, the nonsense that he was writing is because, again, reductionist thinking and, doesn't understand the complexity of human physiology, the way that these interactions and all these different parts that can create all sorts of substrates from all sorts of other substrates if required. But from certain substrates, there are certain negatives, as we know, deuterium and many other things that have other profound negative effects in physiological energy production and just general functioning of the physiology and building and breaking down on a day-to-day basis that the body does. That's what all those beautiful enzymes do. That's why you need your protein kiddies for those purposes. Yes. And when you're doing a lot of physical activity, like Lukey knows, you're breaking down far more, and you definitely need more protein for that reason. Especially people like Sean Baker. That guy's a monster.
I'm not even forcing down 200 grams of protein a day. I'm just eating it naturally just by eating food. It's like I feel like I need that amount.
Nobody likes a loose junction, especially if you're not on the toilet. I think it's confusing loose junction with the anus. An opportunity. I couldn't let it go, Jared. You know me. Just to be sure to have at least 10% adiposity fat, keep insulin low. The system panics if the battery is even seen as low. Yeah. If you go too low, humans are not designed to go too low. They generally aren't in a constant storage mode either. But we do need to have some level of adiposity because it gives us robustness into old age, especially into old age.
But
so
I do have to say that last summer I really liked the way I looked, but I spent some time at home. I couldn't eat all the things I wanted because being at home, my mom tends to get in the way sometimes, and I was losing weight without really realizing it. And now that I've gained a lot, muscle, but also some fat, I have to say I feel much better, like calmer, more stable. So there's definitely something to that.
Yeah, if you take a look at tribal people, they go through seasonal fat storage and then fat loss through the winter, the drier months, in the sort of savanna environment where they've got less access in that regard. So that's normal, what we're supposed to do. So even when we were hitting on a mammoth and eating shitloads and sitting there just indulging, basal levels of metabolism aren't going to get rid of that. You're going to store as well. The difference is because your insulin is relatively much lower, but it's sufficient for muscle protein synthesis, but much lower. You basically, and remember that mTOR, which is always, I remind people, mTOR is not something to fear at all, because mTOR activation, how high mTOR goes, so does insulin and IGF-1. I've talked about that multiple times. You've heard me many times that with the insulin to glucagon ratio being low, 1.3, what do you think mTOR's going? Not going very high, unless you throw sugar in, and then it goes very high. So generally speaking, we get enough and all that. And so even if we store a bit, then we'll reduce it seasonally. And some people do it like that. They'll actually indulge themselves through the summer months, and then through the winter months, they'll just, eat regular food, but not overindulge in terms of, extra fat and stuff like that, and allow the adiposity to come down. And that's sort of going with the seasons. So, or you may want to stay flatline all the year. That's up to you. But don't get too wound up in your head about these sort of things. Anyway, yes. Yes, carotenoids. Yes, definitely it is carotenoids in the skin. Oh, they give you a beautiful glow, an orange glow. Oops. I think that's what some of the vegans suffer from. Bruce, good to see you, mate. Good day, Harry. Happy Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day to you as well. Much appreciated to any of all veterans, past and present. Enjoy the barbecue. Yes, enjoy your barbecue. Yes, there is a vitamin. Oh yeah, that's you're repeating yourself. HD. Don't do that. Please don't do that. We end up with too many things in the chat thing. Elizabeth, how are you? Harry is, if we engage the Randall cycle, can we stop the production of metabolic water? To some extent, yes. Yes, it can have an effect if you're blockading energy substrates coming in. Obviously, you're not going to be able to produce additional metabolic water in that regard. But have we exactly measured it and exactly how much and all that? Don't know. But if you're highly insulin resistant, one thing that we do notice with highly insulin resistant people that are engaging the Randall cycle for a long time, not only are their cells starving, but they are also dehydrated. And they actually end up with symptoms of dehydration as well, especially people like that have got diabetes and stuff like that do have quite a lot of those sort of symptoms. And so, yes, it does affect production. But what rate and the sort of timing and all that, I don't know, because we don't have any real research. It's been measured in general where they've actually seen reductions. This is in animal type things, but the Ruskies that did this sort of stuff, but they never actually measured the rate and exactly when it actually starts, and I don't know whether they actually measured it in relation to the Randall cycle. It was just general insulin resistance, which we know is due to activation of the Randall cycle, but exactly, I couldn't really answer that with. I know it does happen. Yes, there will be a reduction. It won't stop. It'll just be a reduction, and then it'll reduce to very lower levels. But remember, Randall cycle activation doesn't happen in all cells uniformly and doesn't basically happen throughout the body uniformly. So you'll have variations here or there. Some cells still not engaging the Randall cycle, others engaging the Randall cycle, because, if you don't have a lot of energy in your cell, well, you're going to take in more energy. If you're basically you stuff yourself with energy, then you're going to basically downregulate those. And so there is you could say like a time period where the cell will be in a resistant state. And it also depends on how often you do that. How often do you assault your body, and what is the gradient? So Randall cycle low gradient, less of an issue. The higher the gradient goes, the lower the water production happens. So it doesn't stop. It sort of reduces as the gradient increases, in a sense, if that makes sense. Should have used that in the beginning. I waffled too much. Associations are important, but regarding lectins, there is also a mucus lining deficiency component to consider. Yep, that can be an issue as well. That's also due to nutrients, pathogenic bacteria, all sorts of things that can actually cause that as well. It's not a one thing only. Smoking. Yes, Shelley. Things take a year due to reason. I'm glad I don't get those cravings anymore. Yeah, I know. For me, it was, we sort of did it like cold turkey, pretty hard. And we did take an antidepressant called Zyban for about 3 weeks. I didn't do the full 4-week course. I did it to 3. I stopped my associations. It sort of, what it did, it dampened down the associations. But God, the energy that I got, I couldn't get to sleep. Couldn't sleep. The insomnia was just ridiculous. I had to go out. Me and Sean would go out for long walks late at night from about 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock for 3 hours, exhaust ourselves before we could get back home and get some sleep. For 3 weeks, that is all I did. Walk, take Zyban, walk, take Zyban, this antidepressant. And I'm glad I didn't do it long term, because coming off those sort of things is not a very healthy thing to do. This was back in my kibble eating days as well. But freaking hell, I can't believe that I actually even went down that pathway. But, when you're desperate, you do all sorts of things, don't you? So, yes. Support your mitochondrial function. Definitely, Gary. Definitely. Doing my taurine, have watched the cancer videos. Fantastic. Yeah, it will do a bit of that. Yeah, we go through. I mean, is it? How far away from the equator are you, Lukey? Are you further south now?
23 degrees, Harry. I'm just barely subtropical, so it's like UVI 4 recently, so it's
gotcha.
annoying. Yeah. I'm thinking, honestly, if I find a fully remote job, I think I'm moving further north. I've always wanted to. I'm a bit attached to my hometown and everything, but
I understand.
I prefer to live in northern Brazil, so Rio Grande do Norte, if you want to Google the state.
Yeah, just remember, if you do go down the supplement way, I'm sort of forced in the winter when I'm in Hobart, because we're 40 degrees south, where, next stop after here is Antarctica. So, so it's a very different environment. We don't, in winter, UV drops to very low levels. So we've got no option. But you've got to be very careful with supplements, and that is the seed oils. Remember, do not buy anything with a seed oil. There are 2 supplements that I recommend only. Ones that have got no oils, 0. So you take them with food. They're probably the safest ones to do. And the other option, if you can't find those, because sometimes they're hard to find in higher doses, they're usually only 1,000 or 2,000 IUs. Trying to find those in 5 or 10, you really struggle. But then if you're going for those, then go for the coconut ones. Because even because remember the refining method they use in the production process, even if it's like palm oil still has a certain level of PUFA.
Okay.
Yeah. So we want to only go for coconut oil, which is extremely low in PUFA or MUFA. So it's really pretty much, we're talking about it's mostly saturated. So it's probably the safest one to go as an oil in a supplement like vitamin D. And that's the brand on iHerb that I talk about. So it is on Amazon as well, that one.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so that's
going to get that one.
Yeah, that's the one that I would recommend to people.
I think I need just a little bit of extra.
I need to order, because I've been out in the sun and all that, and I'm out of it myself. I need to order as well to get myself some as well, because I gave all my other stuff to Dad, especially when he had his COVID stuff and all that. So he got all my stash.
I'm just being safe, because during the week I can get half an hour. So during work days, half an hour during peak UV window, and on the weekends I go for 2 hours. So 2 hours on Saturday, 2 hours on Sunday. Usually this is enough, but now towards winter it's really low. It's like I only get 2,000. I use approximately a day, and during the weekends it's like 10,000. But I have to stay so long. I have to stay like 2.5 hours out. So
I just noticed. I just brought the chat thing up. Mike's there. G'day, Mike. Gin's there. Michael's there. Sammy's there, and Dan's there. G'day, guys. Now, here in America, I don't have access to pastured pork, and many pigs are raised in filthy conditions. Don't worry, they got very good immune systems in filthy conditions. I wouldn't worry too much about that. Even in the wild, they're in filthy conditions. Are there concerns for parasites when eating pork? For us, can be, especially for wild boar. There's definitely parasite issues. You've got to cook them right through. In Australia, I know that the actual standards of parasite control and testing is really high because of the legislation here. So it's not a problem. I have no idea about America because it's actually state by state in America. It's not federal. So every state has different rules. So you have to check to see whether there's any parasite issues in that country. And if you're going to, I would definitely sort of make sure that I cook it right through if you're going to have pork. And if you can't get pastured pork, well, just try and get maybe imported bacon or stuff like that, just to enjoy that. It's, bacon is also very low deuterium source as well. It's actually slightly lower than actually a pork meat itself because it's got more fat in it. So it's actually lower in deuterium. Even compared to lard, don't ask me why. People do ask me and I go, I've got no friggin' idea. Like lard is 115 parts per million. So way down from the 130. Tallow and stuff like that are in the 120s.
Mm-hmm.
So where bacon, for whatever damn reason, is 113. How the hell do you get to 113 when lard, which is pure fat, is 115? Don't ask me. I got no idea why that part of the pig where they get the pork belly is much lower in deuterium than compared to the rest of the actual pig. When that part, the pork belly as well, if you think about it, it's less exposed to UV.
Yes.
So how does that bloody work? What does it sit on its stomach and play with itself in the sun? Maybe I haven't watched enough pig videos, but
I don't know, Harry. But maybe that is a storage area, and
maybe yeah.
And because it is storage, it's prioritizing lower deuterium. But
maybe
who knows?
Yeah, that could actually that's an interesting hypothesis. That it basically it's storing fat as energy in that area, and so it will prioritize low deuterium because it's actually deteriorating like us, reducing the deuterium level.
Yep.
So yeah, it makes sense. Could be a possibility. You may be onto something there, Lukey. I like the hypothesis.
I love figuring out things.
Yes. Better than the one that Paul Mason made. Yeah, as long as if you've got gut permeability and stuff like that, yeah, you probably could get it through the but if you don't, like most of these people don't, no, that's not going to happen. And then there's a whole lot of other things. There are certain types of enzymes that are breaking this stuff down if they're not present. There's bacteria that break down certain lactobacillus ones. If they're not there, that can be a problem as well. This is modern people's diseases with diseases of civilization, less to do with compounds in animal foods. It's sort of reactivity and susceptibility due to, the potted cat situation with multiple generations of eating shit and really wrecking our guts, wrecking our immune systems, wrecking a lot of our gut microbiome characteristics. Our guts are very different than the guts of people in tribal areas. We know that. We've seen it. We've checked it. And we know that certain strains of bifidobacteria and certain strains of lactobacillus are completely missing in 90% of the population in North America. And they are important strains which are beneficial and also tend to also affect their vagus nerve. So,
Yep.
so I mean, so is it really the beta casein, or is it a whole lot of other factors that are basically allowing this compound? And is it being broken down sufficiently in the gut? All these proteins, why aren't these proteins being denatured completely in the gut? Is our pH, low enough to
Precisely.
basically cause this denaturing? So is there enough taurine and chloride in our food to basically make sure that that happens? Remember, these studies are basically on people who are on mixed diets and primarily on very low animal diets. So they have none of these protective. They've got leaky guts. They got hardly any taurine in the diet to regulate their whole gut system. They got none of this sort of stuff. As I said, this is based on research which is epidemiological in nature, and with some mechanistic studies which are flawed. I can pump into your bloodstream directly a number of things which normally won't cause you any problems through the food supply. But if I pump them directly into your, like cholesterol or anything else into your bloodstream, I will cause clotting factors or cause a whole lot of things. That doesn't mean that causes the problem. That's in a lipoprotein normally, but in its pure form in there, it's probably not the way it should be in there. So I think people are confusing physiology issues and then certain outcomes, and then the substance itself through reductionist mechanistic studies, and coming to wrong conclusions.
Yeah, and I'd be careful with this, because this is actually a vegan talking point. That they say, oh, you're addicted to dairy because it has opiate-like properties. And look, that is so low. That doesn't make any sense. And
Exactly.
even if it made any sense, I replied to Mike in another message just down the line. But things like grains, the opiates in wheat, it's like 10, 20 times higher of an effect. So
stop worrying about beta casein 1 in particular. Stop worrying about it. People worry far too much. And if you're really worried about it, go to beta casein 2.
Yep.
If you're really worried about it, in that regard. But no, people have been exposed to beta casein 1 for quite some time, especially in Northern Europe, and Southern Europe less. I know Mike comes from Southern Europe, from Italy, and so Southern Italians, Greeks, we pretty much have been with our sources of casein have been A2. A2. So A2 has been because it's basically found in all the livestock in Africa, in Asia, in southern Europe, and also sheep and goats as well are all the same. Camel is the same. Horse is the same. A2. So all that, it's just Northern European dairies, and the mutation happened because it actually increases milk production.
Oh.
So beta casein 1 actually will produce more milk. Cows that have got that. So they're more productive as cows. And so that's the reason why this happened. That, there was certain domestication, crossbreeding that was done, and eventually this emerged. They saw an increase in the milk production, but later on they realized that also the casein had changed. But that was a very, very long time ago. It wasn't in recent times. This is quite some time back. It's only in recent years that we've learnt about beta casein 1, A1. So I call it 1 just to make it easy, because that's what in most of the textbooks they won't call it like A1 or A2. They'll just call it 1 or 2, just to simplify things. But it's the same thing. People know what we're talking about. Yeah. Well, why would it cause, gastric motility issues or constipation? Well, most of these people are probably having stuff that is pasteurized, so less taurine. They're also having less animal foods, less taurine, which basically regulates motility and could be the issue rather than the actual food itself.
Yep.
In that regard. Now, yes, dairy does have a bit of a constipating effect, especially if it's higher in protein and less fat in it.
Exactly.
You know, but if you basically get enough fat in it, it won't be an issue. And if you get enough taurine, it'll all be regulated, so it won't be an issue either. And constipation is different compared to absorbing. If you have a big meal of food, your motility will slow down. It's supposed to do that because you don't absorb the into the amino. This is why people worry. Remember, I did those videos about how protein doesn't raise your sugar and stuff like that.
Yep.
Unless it's amino acid powders, that's a different thing. We're talking about food here, not amino powders and stuff like that, and supplements and stuff like that, but actual food. So if you're only looking at food, you don't see that. And usually when they do casein, like casein 1 and casein 2, they use casein in studies, they don't see it either, because that's also coming, it's a product coming from food. They use primarily in a lot of the rat studies casein as the protein source, if you've noticed. So they don't see that either. But you will see a slower absorption because you've got a bigger pool of amino acids. And so you can only, there's a rate at which you can absorb them through the middle part of the intestine. Well, you're actually absorbing them through all three parts of the intestine, but primarily from the middle part, the majority of protein will go in. And that will actually fill up a protein pool, will be uptaken, and then more will be taken in. And so that's why you absorb, if you have a big meal, you can absorb protein over anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. That's normal. That's what you're supposed to do, to absorb protein. You don't want this massive influx. The body's smart. It regulates us, So constipation is when you really know you've got constipation. You're backed up. You can't get stuff out. Your actual motility is stuffed in your colon. This is what I'm talking about, is motility in the small intestine is regulated by the amount of protein in there. In the colon, if things are getting into the colon, a lot of protein, then you've got a problem. You've got malabsorption issues. If you're getting a massive volume and then you're getting constipated, you've got malabsorption issues. That's a different kettle of fish altogether. So, yeah, and there you can have problems, and that usually is because of a lot of fiber. If you look at fiber, it's got like little hooks under electron microscope, little hooks that tear little cuts into the actual colon. And when you do a lot of these damaging effects to your colon, what happens is the ability for it to function, peristalsis, to function properly, is diminished. So that motility is due to things like diverticulitis and other damaging to the colon from fiber, which is contraindicated. So it's usually these foods that are causing the problems and damage, and not getting enough animal foods that are going to give you the butyric acid type stuff, the short chain fatty acids that are going to heal and provide energy for that tissue. And if you don't have that, then it's not going to function properly. But that's a different kettle of fish altogether. I think a lot of people, and most of the constipation studies are being done on people on mixed diets. They're not done on carnivores or low carbers or anything like that. So it's highly confounded by what these people are eating as well.
It's like there's this like Stockholm syndrome, I think, in the community sometimes, where people are like, no, but I need some fiber. You don't understand. Like I had to be like really disciplined. I stuck with the diet, and it took me like several months to get normal digestion. That's how much deranged I was.
Exactly.
Like 20 years of like eating like bulky meals of like beans and rice. That it does that to you. Even being young, it took me several months to get proper digestion.
It takes time. You've got to be patient and adjusting. What we can do is we can accelerate that process with taking a bit more taurine, and you realize that as well. That's why I recommend it. I've recommended taurine specifically for those purposes. I don't, once you basically are over all this sort of stuff, you can go back to lower doses or none and just get it from the diet. But when you're basically in the middle of a whole lot of these conditions, with higher doses, we can normalize a lot of these things and sort a lot of these things, because you're so deficient in sulfur amino acids. So you put them back in and you fix a lot of these things, and then you can go back to living a normal life. I want people to live a normal life, not to struggle and suffer and all that. Remember, I'm not doing it for the money, guys. I'm just here to basically help you. I've got a day job. I'm not selling anything to you. I'm not promoting anything to you. I'm not giving you any lollipops either. So you got nothing to worry about. If you see me on the side of the road with a lollipop cart, run. But otherwise, yes, I don't think you've got anything to worry about. Just keep it clean. Very much so. And yeah, and basically I think, and yeah. Yep. Correct, Mike. Yep, I agree. Yes, very much. My youngest is allergic to eggs and can't eat eggs in baked products, but not whole eggs. That is boiled, fried, poached.
Can eat them in baked products.
Yeah, well, baked products is a different thing. We're talking about in these experiments that they were actually baking the eggs and the dairy. This wasn't in baked products. We're not talking about baked products. We're talking about actual baking the stuff. So combining a whole lot of eggs, mixing them up, and then baking them in ovens. So they were actually baking the dairy and baking the eggs. So this was this is not a general food product. This was an experiment to see whether the baking process had a different, other things. Keep it clean. HD lollipops from Molly. You're a sick puppy. And yeah, so pretty much I would say experiment. Yeah. Yep, exactly. Yeah. If your pH is really good, you don't really have to worry about anything. You will denature all foreign proteins into their basic amino acids. Chew your food so you can actually help your stomach break things down even better. That's why we need to chew things, not race. It's not a race eating a whole lot of food. Enjoy chewing food. It also helps strengthen all, your facial muscles, and also the bone structure is really good by chewing. Don't swallow, chew. I know some of you ladies like to swallow, but chew. Focus on the chewing. Anyway, before I get into trouble, I better move on.
Yeah, business as usual.
The effect is, I've got to entertain myself somehow. On the, God. Oh yes, it's Harry again. We thought that basically that other guy Roy was crude and rude. Nah, Harry can be just as crude and just as rude. The effect is very weak. Opiate-like activity from dairy is highly debatable. Yep, exactly. And I do have, but I have pastured and I know the source and all that, and I have some raw smoked pork. Never had a problem. But as I said, sourcing is so I wouldn't do it with supermarket stuff. No, definitely not. Yes.
This is quite interesting. My mom and dad, they grew up in very different times, and what the health ministry recommended them back in their during their youth was pork is to always be well done. And I grew up listening to them. I always heard that you always have your pork well done. I'm like, okay. But recently, I've actually checked up on the recommendations, and they have loosened because our standards for raising pigs have improved a lot. So we can actually have medium rare pork now and be safe with it. And honestly, the health ministry is so, well, they're so overly cautious that it's possibly a good idea to have rare pork, honestly. So I'm no longer that afraid of it.
Yeah, look, I don't overcook my pork, but mine's all pastured, and I know that it's actually like they assess it for parasites and stuff like that. And so when they actually kill an animal and all that, they actually, as in Australia in particular, they actually do assess it in Tasmania, and so it's pretty much certified. We've never had any parasite issues with pork in Tasmania. It's never happened. So I'm quite safe, and I do enjoy smoked raw, pork. It's really nice, the flavour. The fat is really nice as well. Look, I don't mind it when I cook it, like bacon and stuff like that. But when it's smoked, and it's not burnt, the smoking flavour is quite intense. When you cook it, it's the smoking flavor is still there, but it loses the intensity. Yep. I find, and I really like that smoky flavor, and so yeah, so that's the sort of reason. But recently, I've been sort of a bit addicted to. I've been consuming a lot of beef bacon, so
yes.
That is really nice. So I've been hammering the beef bacon. Even last time I grabbed quite a bit. So I'll have to go next week it's Hello Kitty. G'day. How are you going with that other thing? Yes. Let me know when you finish it. And yeah, so pretty much I wouldn't be too people get too concerned. But obviously, there are some countries around the world where you have to sort of be, Yes, exactly. Yeah, we were scavengers. That is true. We were very much scavengers. Yeah. The only difference is, Gary, that most of people today are not living ancestrally or grown up ancestrally. So that's why we have to be very careful what we recommend. But if people basically get their systems to a very ancestral state, yes, they can tolerate even raw fermented meat. And I've had fermented meat, which, putrid. That's what scavengers could actually consume. After a couple of days, it would become a bit putrid. So, yeah. And you've got the upregulation, because people get concerned, okay, if you've got some level of putrefaction, aren't the PUFAs and the MUFAs in the actual meat going to oxidize and all that? Not to the level that they will if they go through an industrial facility like cedar oil. So yes, you will get a few trace levels will go up in that regard, but you're in a low carbohydrate state with very high glutathione, and glutathione is basically, and superoxide dismutase, but the glutathione is also recycling all your vitamin C and your vitamin E in your system, and as a consequence of that is you can deal with those trace levels, not an issue. That's why a lot of people concern themselves far too much with animal PUFAs, far too much, because we were eating putrid stuff after days, a big mammoth, and those fatty acids, you think they hadn't broken down to some extent? Give us a break. So yes, thanks for putting that thing up, Gary, because it actually gave me a reason to basically make that actual argument in terms of putrefaction and the trace elements of oxidation to PUFA. We concern ourselves far too much. And that's why when people come to me and say, sort of, I can't afford, but I'm eating certain things which are grain fed and all that. And I'm concerned about pork, the PUFA in pork and all that sort of stuff. And I've talked about that. It's a non-issue. Now, the only issue that I've always talked about with animal foods is the deuterium side. They're eating high deuterium foods.
Yep.
But they still remember, they still deteriorate like us. They still get rid of the deuterium.
Yes.
So the difference is going to be like 2 or 3 parts per million more than from a pastured animal. It's not going to be massive. And as you can, with your hypothesizing about the pork belly, storing it away, how they deteriorate more of that, why it's lower, even though it doesn't have any sun exposure compared to the other stuff, around, the top of the animal, the pork, the pig. So it makes sense. We do have these enzymes that can actually do deuterium depletion. It's only when you overwhelm the system, which is what we do today, too many carbs, too many seed oils, and all that, that's when we get far more damaging effect to our mitochondria. But we can still, even some of the storage stuff that happens, it will still be lower in deuterium. And that's why when they look at even pork, that's not even grass-fed or finished, most of those studies that looked at pork, they were basically regular pigs.
Yep.
They weren't grass pastured or whatever, and they still had deuterium levels in the lower levels, the 150, 100. It was about 100. I remember one study was 117. It's still bloody lower than even tallow. So why are you concerned? I wouldn't be concerned. Really wouldn't be concerned. Unless you basically gave that animal shitloads of seed oils, shitloads just before you slaughtered it, which is unlikely. But if you did that sort of stuff, didn't give it any time to do, then you may push in the whole of the body, because remember, there's a rate limiting. How much can come through the gut, how much can be absorbed in, and how much will be distributed to all the cells around the body. You'll still only get a small proportion in every single one of those cells, a couple of parts per million extra from what it was. So, again, it's not going to be a big issue. It's not like going through an industrial facility and being, where you're adding deuterium as a part of an industrial process, because that's the way, all processed foods, you actually end up adding more hydrogen ions, heavy hydrogen ions. It's just, that's what processing does. And that's why seed oils are the highest, even compared to refined sugars. Like refined sugars maybe up to 160 odd, a bit higher sometimes, depending on the level of processing. And even those protein bars, guys, that you're out there, they're going to be higher in deuterium as well. They're all processed as well, your Atkins bars and whatever else. Just remember that. And then on the other side, the seed oils are just up to 255. They're literally like double the safe limit of 130, which is where olive oil is. It's just a reality. Those are the things that we really need to worry. Sometimes we overinflate things that are not as that. Contraindicated, that vaping. I'm eating early in the day in case leptin is an issue. Couldn't get doctor to order the test. They won't do any tests. You should know that, Tracy. You're in Australia. God, medical system down here, you struggle to get a vitamin D test in Australia and New Zealand. It's a joke. Sort of. And what do you need that? Freaking hell. So people, Harry, when people think about Asia like a very sensitive to dairy, have they heard of Mongols? Yeah, I know. Mongolia? Yeah, I know. They don't. And let's not forget, there are a number of Asians that actually have consumed milk. They start as babies consuming milk, and they do consume milk products of other animals, and they have for a very long period of time, camels and many other things, goats, sheep, so the Indians, vegetarians that have been consuming milk products for a very long time. I mean, this whole notion, dairy and all that, there's a lot of bullshit about that. Asians don't consume dairy. What?
Harry, have you seen? I think there are studies on this, but people were talking about it's like a phenomenon that society has noticed in Japan that after the introduction of like dairy to their food culture, that the heights have like sharply increased.
Well, let me fill you in on another secret. Prior, they actually did have access to dairy before, and it was one of their emperors that actually banned it.
Oh,
Exactly. So yeah, so
oh,
so it's a bit more nuanced, the story, in that regard.
interesting.
And that access to that came from from China, because remember, northern China was very much dairy, as the
Yep.
Mongols, northern Chinese, they were very closely related. The Koreans as well. It's just at different periods there were certain emperors or sort of plant-based type emperors that basically tried to limit certain foods. Maybe for control, maybe for ideological reasons, for a whole lot of things. So yes, so it's a bit more, and what Mike says about Mongolians, but also the Indians, subcontinent India,
Yep.
dairy culture, and that's 1.4 billion people today. So not it's about a third of the population of of Asia.
And it's like people they
Of the
still
three, well, a bit over a third of the population, because there's about 3 billion in
like
Asia, the total
you
population. So it's
you have like such large populations that have traditional consumption of dairy, and you still have vegans going around and saying, "No, but most people in the world are lactose intolerant. We shouldn't consume dairy." And it's like
yeah, I know.
brain dead.
And if you have raw milk and you get the lactase from the actual dairy itself, it's more tolerable. You'll actually find more lactose intolerance in parts of Africa than you'll find in Asia or
Yep.
Europe or elsewhere. So the higher levels. And even there, I know in South Africa, there's a tribe there that actually has zero lactose persistent genes. And what they do is they ferment the lactose out of, and they have this fermented sort of milk product. So, yeah, I know.
I
It's
ac-
idiotic, the sort of stuff that people come up with out there.
I actually
G'day,
had the
Jin.
experience of someone in Bart's server shared their anecdote. They actually met a guy from Somalia over on Discord, and he was saying that he spent like several weeks in the desert, like herding camels, and he was just having camel milk and nothing else, and he was fine.
Exactly. Yeah, raw camel milk is really high in lactoferrin, really good for your immune system. It's one of the highest. It's the reason
Yep.
why they say that they say that raw camel milk is really good for you, healthy. Well, it's the lactoferrin in it. That's what it is, guys. It's bloody simple as that. It's not complicated. Are all oils that are liquid at room temperature rancid to a certain degree? Yes. Except when you're looking at oils like coconut oil. It's probably the safest because it's highly saturated. Palm oil, if it's like freshly, recently extracted, because it does have, now, the kernel of the palm oil has less PUFA, so it's less of a problem. That will actually have less oxidative products and less aldehydes compared to all other oils. Coconut being the best, then palm oil, especially from the kernel, not from the actual, from the plant itself. It has more PUFA, and then you go down with all the other seed oils, which have got more PUFA, and it's the processing really that actually does the thing. So if you take a pure palm oil and you use that for one-time cooking, not an issue like traditionally people did in Southeast Asia. But Now you take it, you put it through an industrial system, you refine it so you can cook it over and over again. That's a different product altogether. That's an industrial, product which will have some level of trans fat, some level of aldehyde, some level of primary and secondary oxidative products, not to the same level as canola oil or all these other oils, the rapeseed oil and stuff like that. Yes, there's a bit of a difference in that regard. So yeah, so there's a lot of things. Oils in canned cod liver, rancid, yes. Should it be discarded? Yep. Is it good to eat along with? If you eat cod liver from an actual fish that that you caught or you bought it that was actually quite fresh, not a problem to eat that sort of liver. There is one product that is the only one I recommend, and it's usually for people that have got they got genetics with carotenoid issues, or they've had severe skin issues, and they need to basically sort out those sort of things. Then I only recommend one brand, Rosita, cod liver oil or Rosita, some of their products that are basically traditionally extracted, not under heat, and other ones. It doesn't mean that they won't, and you put them in the fridge. You keep them in the fridge to prevent them from going rancid or stuff like that. All oils will eventually go rancid to some extent. So you slow it down by putting them in the fridge. But that's probably the only product that I would recommend for a short-term use to correct certain things and stuff like that. But I wouldn't recommend it like forever. You probably don't need it. General food, animal foods that are fresh, extracted, butter tends to basically maintain pretty well because it's in refrigeration and things like that. It's more saturated as well. So that's another important factor. So it's all these sort of things. Oils are just contraindicated. You don't want them, especially in the modern world where they've been very highly refined. So it's not only the rancidity, the aldehydes that rip your lipid membranes, which is not a good thing to damage the membranes of your cells. But on top of that, it also has high deuterium, which can damage your mitochondria long term and reduce your energy production, which means your healing capacity goes down. So you will accelerate aging and damage. So no, I don't take any fish oil, Jay. I eat fish if I want to get anything. And ruminant animals, if they're pastured, they will have, as I said last time, because I was eating a lot of probably I was overdoing the beef jerky and certain other foods and all that, and probably not getting enough DHA, and I had a bit of a craving for fish, and I did fish for a couple of days and it all resolved. So that's how you deal with your requirements. But generally speaking, I try and incorporate fish at least once a week into my intake. Like I'll have quite a lot of fish on that day. So, and that sort of fixes up the whole problem in that regard. Humans primarily can get enough omega-3s and omega-6s from ruminant animals, especially if they're grass-fed and grass-finished. So it was just at the time, this was through the COVID period, and I couldn't get access to my regular sort of stuff. And so I had some delivered stuff, supermarket stuff. It's probably what actually, and that's where I noticed the difference, that basically those sort of things, because I were interstate, they weren't Tasmanian locals, which are all grass fed and finished down here. And it's probably, they were probably grain finished at the end. And I had a sort of a craving for fish, which I've never had before at the end of that. So I realized probably not getting enough DHA, but normally, yes. But some people, maybe in North America, may not be able to get pastured stuff and have regular supermarket meat. incorporate a bit of fish, sardines or whatever, to try and get that additional DHA. You do not need to use rancid oils with high levels of aldehydes and primary and secondary oxidative products. They will harm your mitochondria, your cardiolipin, which is that part which is just after complex 4, which means that you won't be able to maintain a good gradient of protons, which means that your energy production will drop, which isn't a good thing. So, well, it is a poof. It is made of omega-3s. Sorry, 6s, that part primarily, So that's the reason why you don't want. And when you're taking in rancid stuff, it's going to go there and it's going to damage those susceptible omega-6s in the cardiolipin. So you've got to be very careful what you put in your body. And most cod liver stuff is extracted under heat and is rancid, and also has a lot of aldehydes. Not a good stuff. Please avoid it like the plague.
Yeah. Actually, Harry, this is interesting, but a few weeks ago, can't really remember the exact time, but so Mike from High Intensity Health, he had a guy over. The guy was like, he's the owner of an omega-3 supplement company, and he was talking about how important it is to supplement, to have like the omega-3 oil and stuff, and he was addressing critics. He was saying that they even did tests on purposely oxidized oil, and they couldn't see the metabolites in people just a few days after. And I'm like, are you sure that's because the metabolites went away, or did they just get lodged in the tissues? Like,
exactly.
It's like and the guy, he wasn't even aware of like ketosis at all, because one important thing that happens when you are following a species appropriate diet is that being in a ketotic state actually spares omega-3s.
Exactly. Well, the thing that actually will reduce omega-3s like DHA is actually blue light exposure.
Yep.
So if you're having a lot of blue light, you're not wearing the Roy glasses, you basically will have problems with having sufficient. Yeah, that's another issue in itself as well.
Mm-hmm.
Approximately how many days can metabolic water sustain a dry fast? I did 3.5 days. Not a problem whatsoever. And I was working as well. Sedentary lifestyle with low activity levels at minimum. I was actually power walking to work. And so, yeah, I was still power walking to work. And I was basically coming back from there, and I was working all day. And I even did a couple of 9.5-hour days. So, yeah, so I was fine. But that's not for everyone. It depends on whether you're fat adapted sufficiently. If you're fat adapted, you can hydrate. Hydration comes from fat. Most desert species have got big fat stores. That's how they hydrate, with fat. Most of our ancestors did the same thing, and still many tribal people go out in the wilderness hunting in savanna environments. Very, we're talking about dry, hot environments, and they are hydrating with their own body fat. They don't take any water with them. It was only basically people there like Mary Ruddock and others that were basically carrying a whole lot of bottled water, and these people were looking at them and going, "Oh, this is how we get our water," and they were going to leaves. If they said, if we need some hydration, we get it from the leaves and we drink it, which is low deuterium because of the UV, the photosynthetic effect on those leaves. It's low deuterium. It's the fruit where the concentration of deuterium is placed, because it's a growth factor. So, yeah, that's why deuterium is not a good thing. Also, for people with cancer, usually have high deuterium levels in their body. Yes, that's for another day. So, yeah, it depends on how fat adapted you are. I always say to people that go into what I usually do is when I go into a fast like that, I usually up my I'll consume like high fat cream, and as long as your gut's fine and you don't end up with diarrhea. but usually I don't have that problem, so I just basically will consume more liquid fats and stuff like that, some Evian water, which is lower in deuterium, and then I'll do my fast. But I'm fat adapted, so you always should go into a fat adapted state, because it can take up to 3 days to become fat adapted if you're not fat adapted, and you will suffer, as Bart found out remember when Bart did that? Because he was actually drinking some alcohol and whatever else, and then he did a dry fast, and he started getting dehydration, pains in his back, and all sorts of things. And that exactly happened because he was not fat adapted at that stage, because he knocked himself out of ketosis. It would have taken him about 3 days to get back into deep ketosis to be able to do a dry fast. So you need to make sure you're in a good level of ketosis, fat adapted state, before you go into dry fasting. And don't do it beyond 3 days, because remember, you still need, for all your enzymes, you need B vitamins and trace minerals. So you need to put them back in. Got it? Very important. Sammy, my mate. I haven't seen you on the Zoom things. Paul's been there. You haven't made an appearance, mate. What's happening? I did Gentex insomnia was nuts, crazy dreams. Okay, yeah. Okay, so you've tried some stuff like that. Yeah, I know. I can. You're right about the dreams. Yeah, that was also had some weird dreams. Yeah. Oh. And I only did it for 3 weeks. Some people do it for a couple of months. I don't know how they do that. God, without going deranged. So, I mean, I had to go for hours and hours of walking to try and, metabolize. And I've got because I've got those genetics that can clear out drugs out of my system much faster. Can you imagine somebody that doesn't have those genetics? I would definitely not be recommending that approach to someone. I'm just saying what I did. Those people would probably take about 6 hours of exercise to try and metabolize the shit out of their system, so it wouldn't affect them negatively with this, all the other stuff. No, why would it? No.
It can loosen your intestines, but not exactly diarrhea.
No, what it does is it actually can affect motility. It re-regulates motility back to where physiologically it should be. But there are other factors that also influence motility: the gut microbiome, the composition, certain bacterial strains, the mechanics of the gut. That means if you've had damage like diverticulitis or other damage to the cell lining and all that, they may not be, you may need to heal those properly before you can regulate properly the gut with taurine. So, as I said, it's all nuanced, Elizabeth. It's all nuanced. It's never an easy sort of do this and it'll all work. We're damaged people. The reason why you guys turn up here and chat with me or, is because we're damaged people. We've gone through the ringer. And a lot of people out there, it's a horrendous amount of people that are damaging themselves on kibble and all sorts of crap and seed oils every single friggin' day. It's going to be a never ending line of people turning up. Most people go through the standard medical thing and just have a bag full of drugs, and it will still not fix their problem. It's just the unfortunate state of affairs. We're not ancestral, unfortunately. We've been doing many inappropriate things, and now we're suffering and trying to fix this and fix that and fix these. So an ancestral diet is the basis, the foundation. Then we do a bit of biohacking with vitamin D, with taurine, with choline, with other things to correct things, because ancestrally you would only need a certain quantity of certain stuff, of certain nutrients to run a whole lot of biological processes. then you come in a deranged, wrecked way to somebody like me. Well, I'm going to assess you to see, or you go to Bart or Pim or Mary for consultation, and then, because I don't do any, because I've got a day job, I've got no time, and then they will go through and look at your history and all that and work out a protocol specifically for you to basically get you on the right path. And it can take differing amount of time for differing people based on a whole lot of how much damage they've got, what their condition is, so many variability. I used to, when I was doing some free consultants, when I had time, now I've got zero time. I used to basically cover some without ending up burnt out myself, because I just, when you've got a day job, as even Lukey knows, a lot of the social media and other things, he's dropped off some of that sort of stuff. And he's younger, and I'm 56. And he knows quite well that how tiring you come back from work, and I still sometimes will punch out a whole lot of stuff, and me, hours and hours I'll be on, YouTube sometimes. But I do that because I love what I'm doing. I want to help people. I want to, I suffered myself with health problems, but there's only so many hours in the day, unfortunately, to do these things. So it's just the reality. But yeah, sometimes you need coaching to get through these sort of things. G'day, Dan. Hi, Harry. What are your thoughts on using minerals to balance mineral levels in the body? Unnecessary waste of money? Yep, basically, exactly. Very much a complete waste of money. Your electrolytes and I've done videos on magnesium, potassium. You actually get more than you excrete. You'll get, even if you eat a small steak, you'll get over 1300 to 1500 milligrams of potassium. You know how much you excrete every day? 192. Got it? So basically, a lot of it won't even get absorbed. It'll end up in your feces. It won't even absorb it because your body doesn't need it. Got it? So it's expensive supplements. Magnesium, 120, 20 from the feces, and 100, that means through the bile, your bile, getting it into your feces and getting it out, 20 milligrams, and 100 through, urine. But at the nephrons, the tubules in the nephrons, there you could actually recover some magnesium, a few other minerals as well, not only magnesium. So depending on the body's homeostasis, but guess what regulates it? This ion transfer, and using bicarbonates and other things to buffer the, but also hydrogen ions that are basically being excreted in particular to basically manage that that balance. Taurine, yes, our favorite little regulator of the body. It regulates. It's an osmolyte. It's your body's osmolyte regulating your minerals and fluids in your body. Eat enough meat, you'll get enough taurine, you'll be able to regulate, unless you've got other conditions that are depleting it. A lot of your sulfur amino acids like oxalates and many other things, that's a different thing. Then you may need to supplement a bit or do, high dose supplementation for specific conditions. People that have got a cancer or other things, I put them on very high doses. Other people that have just got oxalates, I may put them on a mid-range, a couple of grams, 4 to 6 grams, depending on the size. I usually ask, how big are you? If somebody's 6 foot, whatever, I'm going to put them on 6. Somebody's basically, middle, 150 pound type thing. Yeah, I'll probably put you on 3 or 4. So it depends on where you're at. So I supplement based on body mass. It's a bit like the veterinaries. I treat you like an animal, not a caged animal, but like an animal. So I will basically give you the dosages, not the RDIs, which are ridiculous, not related to humans at all. So yeah, so basically, yeah, waste of bloody money. Do not waste your money. As if our ancestors ran around with they would have died out a long time ago. God almighty. Yes. So it's just people trying to sell product again, as I said. They need to make it feel like it's important. Yeah, it is definitely a waste of money. Once you get your taurine levels up, whether you get it from your animal foods or by supplementing a bit, immediately all your electrolyte issues go away. Your cramping goes away. All this goes away, and you go, oh, you'll be shocked.
Yes, you will
Say
be.
something, Luke. I get people all the time sending me basically and thanking me and stuff like that. Like I had even today, another lady, and she doesn't even do a carnivore diet. She said, I came across you. She said, I can't go pure carnivore. I disagree with you on that, but I love you. And I have followed the taurine stuff, and my anxiety has gone away. My health. So she had anxiety, it's gone. She had basically all these other conditions, gut issues and all that, all gone since she's taken taurine. And she goes, thank you. You've given me my life back. I'm happy. I'm happy that she's basically, she's better. That's, I think she actually came on. This is, the anti-vegan, the lady anti-vegan. I left a comment.
Oh,
she
yeah,
actually,
Tuesday.
she put a comment under, I put a comment under somebody else, and she actually made a remark. And anyway, long story. Then she came back to one of my other ones and making another remarks of a similar thing. So, yep. So, yeah, it's nice when you can help people, improve their health and turn things around. But at the end of the day, guys, what I'm using is I'm doing the research and using good research and demystifying the bullshit. Because we're all susceptible to it. I find myself sometimes I have to remind myself, does that actually sound a bit too reductionist, Harry, or something like that? We all slip up. So if I have slipped up on anything, do call me out, because then I can correct myself. Only human. Is it true that taking antioxidants or anti-inflammatories after training harms muscle gains? Yes. Simple as that. There's plenty of research to show that. Yep. Basically. The only thing that doesn't is taurine. Even though it's an anti-inflammatory, it doesn't.
Interesting.
Because it works in other ways.
Yep.
And for some reason, we don't know why. Because remember, you're eating meat, you're going to get taurine. So if it had that effect, it doesn't work. Not all antioxidants work in the same way. So its anti-inflammatory effects are very different. We know it's happening, but it seems to be more the signaling rather than directly, where a lot of antioxidants act directly rather than signaling. So maybe that's the reason for it. It's probably the indirect way. Yeah, it's hard to, look, we know that it happens, but we don't know why it happens. And I can't give you a reason why taurine works that way, because we haven't done the research. So we don't know. We can speculate. And I speculate that it's probably through a number of signaling methods, because we have identified signaling pathways that are influenced and affected by taurine, or as it's called, taut, T-A-U-T, taut. So, yeah, that's a sort of an enzymatic sort of pathway. So, and we know taut is involved everywhere. Wherever you look, you'll see in research, T-A-U-T, that's basically the taurine transporter. And it seems to be involved in all, which is basically, when we're talking about a taurine transporter, we're talking about an enzymatic, and it seems to be involved in all these. You look at cancer research, you look at all these taut everywhere in the physiology. Problem is in all tissues and stuff like that, where we know it's involved, we see the outcomes, but we're not sure exactly how it's interplaying. We'd need to have as I say, would need to have Star Trek type technology to be able to see the signaling that's actually happening, that that molecular signaling, the chemical signalings, to be able to and work out exactly what it's encoded, what is the encoding inside that. That's how primitive our science is. Still,
Yes,
we just see all we see is all these associations or relationships and all that, and that's all we're actually making a whole lot of assumptions from relationships and associations and inferences of possible causality or whatever. That's all we're doing. That's how primitive our science is. I always wanted to say that.
Yeah, but it's true. Like, we can't get like in vivo molecular imaging, so a lot of stuff we simply don't know what's going on.
Exactly. That's why we do reductionist in vitro studies. Yep. But yeah, and we try to mimic and then try to extrapolate and then try to do computational analysis and projections of probable drivers that maybe, and that's as bad as climate change science and the poor modeling that's involved in that. So yeah, so you got to take a lot of, even some of the mechanistic studies that I show. All I'm doing is elucidating what the research shows. This like cause and effect. You take taurine, it affects this pathway in this way. Now, we know that those pathways have a positive outcome, but do we know exactly how they work? No. Do I know how they? No. But we see all these anecdotes and these improvements. And I usually say, when I talk about taurine, I'm talking about animal nutrition, because it's a key constituent of animal nutrition, a key component. It's just that modern processing, the way we actually hang up animals for months, I don't go out hunting, slaughter an animal and have it on the same day. They slaughter, they take a cow to, slaughterhouse, they slaughter it, they hang it up, and they refrigerate it. And it may be delivered in a couple of months. It could be there for 18 months. 18 months hanging, all the fluids are running out. A lot of the taurine is being lost, unfortunately. And the meat is sort of drying out as well to some extent, and you're losing a certain level of taurine. So the quantity of taurine that you're going to get from a freshly slaughtered animal by a tribal person compared to an animal that basically has been hung for months and then delivered to a supermarket, cut up and sold to you in plastic, is completely bloody different. This is the reason why, and the way I actually realized this is how I came about, because people say, well, how did you understand about all this taurine stuff? One, it was my cardiovascular stuff because I knew that hearts, I checked when I had I checked the heart and I said, what has the heart got? Okay, it's got coenzyme Q10. Good. What are the sources? I need to get that. All the different things like taurine and other things like that. I went through all the list. I go, okay. And then I actually investigated, am I getting enough of these things? And then I realized the processing, the hanging and all that. I'm not, potentially. And then I introduced it as a supplement. I tried different supplements and I found that don't really work. And then I came across that other one, which I really like, the Nature's Life one. It's really good. It's exactly like the way it would be in the animal, so it's got similar characteristics in a free form. So it's basically going to be absorbed by the body and used by the body better. And most people have actually, Alex, from the Netherlands, he swears by it. He says he did the same experiment, because he said, oh, well, Harry's recommending this, but I'm going to experiment. So he went and bought all these other taurines and tried them. And he said, nah, Harry's right. Only that taurine seems to have the same effects, these positive effects, far more than the others. Maybe the others have fillers or binders or whatever, and you're not getting as much. Maybe the other ones, if you take double the dose, you'll probably get the same effect, So, and I have done that experiment, and I can confirm that it seems to work anecdotally for me. but it means like doubling the amount. So in that, or even higher. And I don't like doing that. You know, massive amounts of powders. It's processed. I don't like doing that. So I prefer just getting this where I know it's a good price. They've got a very good price product. Plus, you're getting good quantities and stuff like that. So in that regard. Do you think people who benefit from soup stock diets like Mary's, maybe because they might have higher taurine content? Is it the loss from meat in fluids? Yep, it is. Yeah, and that's why I said all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's that's a potential thing, you know, where it's coming, where she's getting it from these stocks, which will tend to have, because they're boiling, they're getting those fluids out, and in the fluids obviously will be also the actual taurine content from those animal products. So it could be. I don't know. Look, I haven't taken the product and researched it to look at the exact composition, because they just have some general information. It's not, you know, of the macro composition, stuff like that. She uses it primarily. She got onto it years ago for herself, and then she used it for a number of people to help them sort of. I mean, remember, she's not pure carnivore. She's low carb. She's keto, but she does basically support consuming more animal foods. So she's shifted more to carnivore with less plants in her diet nowadays, and she usually recommends that for most of her people, and sometimes even puts them on a pure carnivore diet. So in that regard, but yes, she does sell this, so she does have an interest in this product. She gets paid for it, and the other lady that's associated with her. So, but she makes that quite clear in that regard. But it possibly is. I've sort of Dylan along the same speculation as you, that it probably is the high taurine content that's actually helping regulate things in the body for these people. And I think they put some trace minerals and stuff like that, so they're getting better electrolyte, better fluid regulation in their body. So you're getting all that sort of stuff, and then on top of that, you sort of yeah. So I suspect, yeah, in that regard.
Yeah.
You don't mind Red Hot Hots 21. Well, cute lady, you better put something up there. She's asking about the taurine. Can you put a link up there?
Sure.
For
I was
that
already working
lovely
on
lady.
that.
Good. There you go. Service, you know, efficient service. Thanks, Loki. Oh, thanks, Dean. How are you, mate? King of Tasmania. Let's keep it local. Yeah, it is. We're heading in for the winter season. You know, on Wednesday, the 1st of June, it'll be officially winter in the Southern Hemisphere. So, yeah. It hasn't been too bad. We've had a couple of days which have been really like cold at night. I mean, in the morning, we had one day, it was presumably the temperature was 2 degrees, but the feeling, because it had a bit of a wind shear, 2.5 degrees minus Celsius. I better do the Fahrenheit thing for people.
I'm just nodding in disapproval. Terrible. That's terrible. It got to 7 degrees here like last week, and I was already feeling like I didn't want to exist.
Oops. What's it doing?
And that's the thing. Like, people are like, "Oh, you live in Brazil, it must be so fine all the time." No, my state actually gets frost.
So that is basically 36.5 degrees. No, that's not. What am I going? So that's 27.5 degrees Fahrenheit. So 2.5 degrees Celsius is 27.5 Fahrenheit. So yeah, it was a bit on the fresh side, let's put it that way. Because I usually go in with my shirt and singlet. I'm a hot-blooded Greek man, yes. But those mornings, God, I threw the jacket on. I'm going, oh, I walk out and I go, oh, this is too fresh. I'll walk back in, grab the jacket. I was surprised I didn't see Hello Kitty come out on the window saying, "You're soft, or something like that. Because usually she goes, when I'll pop out with a t-shirt in winter and all that, she goes, "You got no feelings." I go, "Oh, did you just realize that?" And I feel nothing. But yes, that day, oh God, 2 days in a row, it was really on the chilly side to be. So yes, Bojack, good to see you, mate. You wish my voice was a bit louder. Yeah, it's sort of, it's the louder, it's what it gets. I probably may have to look at other things. Some people say it's too loud, or what some of my, yeah.
I don't know. It's just fine for me, honestly. But
Turn it down. It's easy to turn down. It's harder to actually. Oh, sorry, turn it up in your case. Yes, some people are turning it down for their own reasons in there. It depends on the bacon. It's not the bacon that actually has the sugar. It's what the company that actually puts in. So the bacon that I get has no sugar in it whatsoever. So there are, like, I know in Canada, a lot of the bacons that they put maple syrup in, and in other places they put raw sugar or high fructose corn syrup, all sorts of things. You just have to read the package, and if it's got that sort of stuff, you don't buy it. But if it doesn't, it's fine.
I don't understand why they add thickeners to some bacon over here. Like, I'm like, why is that there?
When I look at it, if it's got more than a couple of ingredients, I don't buy it. See, that's the reason why all the, like, my salamis, all these sort of things, I always buy the Italian ones, all these sort of cured meats, because all the cured meats, the Italian ones, you look, it's raw, and it's basically, pork and salt, or beef, pork and salt, or, stuff like that. Nothing else. It's got 3 or 4 ingredients. That's it. May have some pepper, may have some basically salt or whatever. It's only got a couple of ingredients. If it's got more than a couple of ingredients that you don't know what the hell they are, I would not be buying the product. Simple as that. I don't, so definitely to be avoided. Unfortunately, they've bastardized the food supply in many ways. It's just the reality. Oh, I was just going to say, yes, I suspect so. Yeah. Our summers can actually get down here. We can get into the 30s in Tasmania, like 33, 34. It usually is in the high 20s or mid 20s, but it can get into the even 40s sometimes. Very rare, but it does happen. But primarily the mid 30s or high 30s sometimes. But yes, it is way warmer in the summer compared to Ireland. And because we're on an island exposed to the sea breeze, we don't really get a lot of frosting. We may get a bit in the morning, but it usually doesn't last, and we don't get hardly any snow unless we get a direct, the winds are blowing directly from Antarctica. That has happened a couple of times where we get the whole of Hobart gets snowed in. But that's a very rare thing. The majority of times, it's probably become a bit wetter than anything else. in that regard. So a bit more humid in spring and autumn, and then it sort of dries out in the winter, but it's usually dry. And it's the wind shear, really. Sometimes the wind shear can be a bit higher. Sometimes the wind shear, it's really the wind shear. It's not that it's terribly cold. If there's not a lot of wind, it's quite mild. The winter, sometimes in the winter, it's sunny outside. I have to put my application in as well to be able to work from home this winter, because usually when it's I don't. I actually go in and so I walk in the morning, walk in lunchtime, then walk in the evening. But when I'm in winter, I work from home, but I'm not allowed to do additional. I can't do additional hours to build up more flex, take days off, which is annoying. But it is more enjoyable because I can take long lunches, which you can't do in the office. So I can go for long lunches and flex off long and just work later hours. So yeah, that's the sort of difference. But I'll have to put my application in for this year's winter period. So I usually will do 2 or 3 days. I'll put for 3 days, but then I can always go into the office if I feel like it. But you have to put down the days at least, So then I can have my long lunches, because when it gets really by 5 o'clock, it starts becoming nighttime outside. So the evenings are cold, the mornings are cold. It's only the midday which is warmer. So I'd prefer not walking in the morning or in the evening, and just go out at lunchtime and have a longer lunch and just in the sun and enjoy it. So that's what I usually do. So I'll be shifting back to home for that reason. Interesting. Yeah, we could eat egg pies. There you go. Another satisfied subscriber. I'm going to be quickly through these just to be able to catch up a bit. Craig, regarding trichinella in pork, it has been hard frozen at 5 degrees or lower for a duration of 20 days or more. There's no risk, according to the CDC. Yep. Yeah. So you can do that. That's true. I don't think people need to really worry. I think they worry too much in that regard. And even then, you can still have it raw if you want to. You can smoke it and have it raw after you've defrosted it. So, because so you've got options. You're right. Yeah. Thanks for that. Very correct. Oz is in trouble. You have a globalist communist about to run the show. How the fuck did that happen? Don't ask me, Dean. I was voting for a different group, but they still got in. Oh, well, the previous one was a bit of a globalist as well. No difference. There's not going to be much of a difference in politics. Let's put it that way. This sort of left-right sort of thing that most people get concerned, they're all the same. They're all controlled by the same elites. And basically, they sell you paradise on earth, and they basically deliver you hell on earth. That's how they operate. They just basically have us killing each other, fighting amongst each other and stuff like that, in order for them to stay on the top of the pile, that little less than 1% that's on top of the pile that pulls the strings and makes sure that everybody else does what they're told and believes everything they're told from the media and all that. And it's become easier for them, since, in the past it was much harder. That's why you had more rebellions, because people wouldn't put up with the bullshit. Nowadays, they're a bit smarter. Nowadays, they've got, initially they had the radio, then the TV, all these other platforms, what I call electronic propaganda systems, and they're able to docile the population even better. And now they're trying to get them to get into, artificial existence and get into sort of immersive environments and, virtual reality, gaming and entertainment. Sounds a bit like the old gladiatorial games. If you take a
Yes.
look at some of the stuff that the people get into, work on those aggressive tendencies and stuff like that. And then we can use you as cannon fodder when we need to. So, yes, very much so. So, yeah, they're all the same. As I said, the only way to strip them of their power is for humans to basically realize that that's what the case is since the pharaohs, that they've been manipulating and controlling us and doing all that. Nothing conspiratorial, it's just a reality. If you're at the top of the pile, you want to keep the plebs beneath you, under control. They've been doing it for a long time. Ruthlessly in some cases with military coming in and slaughtering people just to calm the population down, controlling the population through a bit of culling and some ruthlessness. So it's been happening for a long time, Dean. That's the reality. The thing that they fear the most is if a popular movement ever exists that grows amongst the populace and says enough is enough, we won't vote for any of you clowns, and we will create a popular movement to bring about direct democracy with, some guarantees for minorities, so the majority doesn't override the minority rights like could happen in such a system. And if you have something like that in a peaceful way, what are they going to do? Slaughter the whole population, 90%? No. You can basically remove them from their positions of power, but that's to get the 90 odd percent to wake up from their dream world that they're in, the propaganda world that they're in. That's going to take some time and some doing. So all we can do is be catalysts for that to wake people up. And, maybe in who knows how many years, I don't know, even beyond my life potentially, there may be more people that come to the same realization.
It's kind like we'll keep on fighting, but sometimes it's just so disappointing because things that used to be conspiratorial just a few years ago,
exactly,
they're like, if you said that to someone just a few years ago, they'll be like, that's never going to happen. You are insane for expecting that. And now the guys in the something nomic forum that I don't want to say the name of, they say that stuff out loud, and everyone just accepts it.
Precisely.
And it's getting like, so the window is shifting year by year, and things that people would go against in previous years, things that would rally people up, they are seen as normal today. They are going to take away your ability to eat meat. They are going to take away your ability to own things. And no one's giving a damn about this. But everyone's saying it's normal. Everyone's saying, "Oh, these plans are for your own good. You eat the bugs and things of the sort."
So I'm actually going to do a live stream either on Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on what people actually pick, because they're both going to be wet days down here in Hobart, and it's going to be about the future crisis and the BS and all the other stuff. It'll be on what's happening with blockchain, with currency stuff, what's happening, private agreements and discussions about de-dollarizing from the US dollar, all these things that are happening, future inflation, future food security, the whole lot. This will not be a nutritional thing. It'll be this week. So I'm putting up a poll. Oops. No, we don't want that. And basically people can pick their day or just say, well, either, whatever, and there's the vote right there where they can vote. People can vote what they want. And I will then set up that this week. So it'll be a non-nutrition. Don't come and ask me nutritional stuff because I won't answer them. It'll be all about all the controversial stuff that's happening out there in the world and all the stuff. So hopefully hopefully I don't get a strike for a couple of weeks. But so
yes, I was going to say.
yeah, at the moment they're, because of the Elon Musk effect, they're a bit shell shocked and a bit more than less as severe. If you've noticed, I've backed off a bit, and so it's an opportunity to get stuck into a lot of this sort of stuff because there's a lot of things, controversial stuff. So so I'll be doing a morning show and an evening show like I'm doing. So it'll be a live morning session because I've taken the days off. So, and then there'll be an evening session. So you pick your day, and I will basically make sure that I'm flexed off on. I'm at home, and I'll actually set it up. So whatever at the end. So. Because there's a lot of things that need to be discussed. There's a lot of things about energy. There's a lot of things how that affects, the cryptocurrencies, which I consider more financial vehicles rather than a pure currency. But all this sort of stuff, because people are invested in it and they need to know what's going to happen in that space and other spaces and other areas in their life, real estate market, whatever. It's going to be on everything. Plus, what are the elites doing, and what are their strategies, and what are the geopolitics that are involved, and some of the nonsense out there. There's a lot of bloody nonsense, I can tell you, and there's a lot of things that are happening in the background, So when you look at the actual, even the actual these big so-called sanctions against Russia, I think it's actually affecting. It's actually sanctions against the West rather than Russia. You'll understand what I mean when you do ask me those sort of questions. So anyway, let's move off back to the nutritional stuff. Did you go down to the markets, the farmers market, or not? Yes, we know your religious reasons for that HD. I wouldn't go that far. God, you that gullible. Is pure lemon juice okay to consume together with fatty? Yeah, I love lemon juice on. It's not required, but I love lemon juice on basically my pork. I grew up with lemon juice. They used to have these like on a skewer, souvlaki, the traditional type on coal that they used to cook in grease, and they then would dip it in this lemon juice. It was really nice, and I'm addicted to that taste. So, I love the taste. Not addicted would be the right word, but I love the taste. So I always combine lemon juice with fish, with in particular whitefish, and with not other foods like chicken. I'll put I'll put butter on. Beef I'll put butter on as well. If I want any sort of creamy sort of flavor. But when it comes to pork and lamb, pork, lamb, and fish, I love lemon juice on it. Now with lamb, I can go either way, the butter or sometimes even combine it. So, like with the fish, I actually combine lemon juice with butter. I put the butter first and it melts, and then I put the lemon juice on top. Really nice. So yeah, whatever tingles your fancy. So let's not get too wound up about things. Next, I recently hooked into some Lebanese kebabs. Raw meat was great. Good for you. I've had something similar like that in Greece as well. Is consuming deuterium depleted water depletion center advisable. You don't need, look, if you don't have a specific reason for it, if you don't have cancer, you don't have any things like that, you don't have a lot of derangements, no, you don't need to buy. It's expensive. Why buy it? I mean, if you're eating animal fats, it's deuterium depleted. It's low. The only reason you go for deuterium depleted water to lower levels is only when you're trying to fix mitochondria and trying to flush out the high deuterium levels in your body. It's a different situation. You've got to have cancer. You've got to have a whole lot of derangements. If you're getting enough animal fats, no need. Don't waste your money, please. You know, the only thing that I do is I get that Evian water, which is 146 parts per million. I don't use a lot. You know, it's like for things like my coffee. Better finish this as well before it goes too cold. But yeah, I wouldn't basically be wasting money. That's expensive stuff. You know, have you seen the prices on that? Just a bottle, you're paying about, $6 or $7 for one bottle. You get a whole slab and do that for a couple of months, you'll be out of hundreds of dollars. No, unless you're desperate to bring your deuterium levels down and reverse the mitochondrial state of affairs and improve oxidative phosphorylation to basically be able to generate energy again by flushing out and getting rid of the neutrons inside your mitochondria that are stuffing up your nanomotors. Yeah. Please don't. And then you basically normalize cortisol at night with taurine to basically upregulate, improve your melatonin, and that extra melatonin will repair those mitochondria. So it's all synergistic, lifestyle and animal foods.
Speaking of melatonin, I think I trained too hard today, and I think I gotta go, Harry.
Okay, mate. Thanks for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to be here again, and glad to be able to contribute and help with everyone's questions as well. It's a really nice show. I'm glad to be here again.
Yep. Thanks, mate. I appreciate you turning up. Take care, and we'll chat again.
For sure. Stay well, everyone. See us.
See you, Lukey. And now Lucy is the next taurine. Yeah, I don't think anybody needs to supplement leucine. We get enough from the meat. There's no requirement, zero requirement for any of us carnivores to supplement leucine. The only people that I actually recommend is, like you got older people in your family, like elderly people that don't eat, they're still on kibble diets and stuff like that, giving them leucine plus taurine to try and get them out of a sarcopenic state is probably a good thing, but that's about it. The rest of us definitely don't need any supplementation. Unless you're reversing sarcopenia or stuff like that, then it could be a good idea. And also high doses of taurine, because you can bring down, you can bring down your cortisol, which tears down your muscles, which isn't a good thing, especially people that have a lot of stress and stuff like that. Then you've basically got the myostatin inhibition, which allows for more elevated muscle protein synthesis. So all these sort of things, muscle building capability. Tibet, where bulletproof coffee idea came from. Okay. Did it? Really? Okay. I didn't know that. There you go. I learned something. Tibet. Really? Oh. God, I thought they were into teas and stuff like that, not coffee. Oh, well, there you go. Ah, yes, they are. Well, probably urine isn't the best thing, but is that from the camel? If it's from the camel, it should have lower deuterium. But if it's from humans, probably not. But the camel milk, is very low. Urine seasoned camel milk. I knew Lukey would stay around just for that. Ah, Richard's here as well. G'day, Richard. That's Vivid Mouse for those who don't know who Richard is. Very good Kiwi friend of the channel. and myself as well. Matthews, what do you think about the claim that fiber intake prevents colon and other types of cancer? It's just BS. It actually does creates a lot of inflammation, too much of it. We don't have a cecum to basically break down, and it actually does micro tears. So, especially if it's raw, it's not indicated at all, and it's just nonsense. That's healthy user bias. It's really most people that basically have lower cancer rates are people that are vegetarians that do a whole lot of other healthy things. They don't consume as many seed oils or refined sugars and stuff like that. And it's usually people that are getting the high deuterium, the higher damaging effects of the mitochondria, that are on a standard diet. They are the ones that are, and they tend to have less fiber, but it's not the fiber. That's just an association. That's, as I said, these are all associational studies that these things are based on. Whenever they do mechanistic studies, it doesn't pan out. And there's one that Paul Mason actually has a video. If you actually, Paul Mason fiber, it actually shows where they actually did, this is in Sydney, Australia, where they did the study, and they actually removed different levels of fiber and they saw different gut improvements. And when they went zero, all symptoms of those patients, these are patients with actual disease, gut disease problems, all went away, their symptoms. Tells you a lot about fiber. These are just, the other stuff is associational claptrap. It's like I did a video on this guy about lipopolysaccharides and and sepsis and stuff like that. I think it was related. This guy Ian, if you Google my name, Ian Harry Serpanos, and you'll actually see where I school this boy who basically can't even read science. And actually, I go through and actually show quite clearly how the meta-analysis is the conclusions from the meta-analysis are coming from all the poor research that has been added to the meta-analysis. And only one of the research studies actually shows the inverse, the opposite. When you see an opposite in something, because there is a thing called the Bradford Hill criteria. When something is, it always will associate to differing degrees, but it always will associate. If it ceases to associate, you get the inverse effect in research. It means it's a bust. It's not valid because it can't even associate under certain circumstances. So how can it be related? And it's the same thing with fiber. When they do mechanistic studies, they can't find that relationship becomes inverse. Again, it's because of the healthy user bias of epidemiological studies where people are just filling out questionnaires. That's what all these claims are based on. It's bullshit. Yep, we did cover that earlier. Oops. With a hump, yes. Depends what sort of hump, HD. People could construe, the sexual type as well. Finding out ways of tackle lipofusion buildup and mitochondrial damage would be a quantum leap forward in dealing with aging. Not sure what to do. Lower deuterium. Lower deuterium if you want to maintain good quality mitochondrial function so you don't get any of these problems, because lipofusion can build up and stuff like that, and ceramides and whatever. It's all related to what we call syndrome X or metabolic syndrome, or engaging the Randall cycle. That's what it is, HD, engaging the Randall cycle, being a close friend of Philip Randall's. So really you need, for mitochondrial health, low deuterium intake of foods, which is basically sticking to a species appropriate diet long enough to fix all that sort of stuff, with a few biohacks that I've talked about. You will find in my cancer playlist a lot of that information. Oh, he's gone. So who knows? But he's no different than anybody else. They're all part of they're still controlled by the elites. The different message, it's one way of being able to facilitate. They don't make any real changes. If you really look at their policies, don't look at what they say, look at what they do. What they do is completely different from what they say. I mean, Biden went to the union reps and said, oh, we want to basically look after you guys against Amazon. And then the next day, a couple of days later, he gives Amazon, $10 billion. So don't listen to what they say. Always look at what they do. And what they do is always different than what they say. So it's pretty much irrelevant, I find. Yes. Was busy with family stuff. Yes, I was. You were busy. Fair enough. Yep, that's okay. I was just wondering where you were. Damaged and insane. Psychopath Grunt advised to limit protein to 40 grams per day. Is crazy. That guy's definitely certifiable. Yes, it definitely is not. Yeah, and then they wonder why so many elderly have got sarcopenia and osteoporosis and all these other health problems. Absolutely crazy. G'day, iNature. How long would it take for young adults to heal from the damage of a sad diet? Depends on how long they've been doing the damage and how long, is a string. Pretty much. It really depends. How much they're still cheating, how much they're not compliant. There can be genetic reasons that they may require certain nutrients more than others. There are so many variables in that regard. But generally speaking, if you get on a species-appropriate diet, a younger person should have far less mitochondrial or general damage and should, within, if they've got low damage, within a month or two. If they've got high damage, it could take up to a year or two, depending. So it depends on the degree of damage that's actually occurred and the degree of, contraindication. And some damage could be permanent as well. So if they were from a very young age doing a vegan or vegetarian a lot, they could have sustained. Now, there are ways even for those people to deal. And what you'd actually be looking at is definitely eggs would be a central element in their diet. You're trying to get as many phospholipids in for the brain and also phosphatidylserine and phosphatidylcholine. So I'd be supplementing choline as well, and also making sure they're getting enough meat to get enough serine in. You could supplement phosphatidylserine as well because it does have an ability in high doses to turn off certain genes that are related to brain-related issues. So we're talking about degenerative type genes, which some young people, if they've done a lot of inappropriate things and have some genetic predisposition, may have activated, turned on those genes. High doses of phosphatidylserine can turn off those genes. Not all of them, but in certain conditions they can. So, yeah, it depends on how much, That's a very general question. Would like to thank the person behind the Harry shots. That's El Llama. So if you see Llama here, there he is. Llamas learns beyond the letter B. So he's the guy that actually does all the short videos for me. So you can thank him. You've seen him on he's popped in and out on some of the Zoom things. Anyway, Sue. Dusters for me. Oh, and a pretty skirt while you're doing it. Okay. I know what people are going to say about that comment of mine. Anyway, I better move on before I get into trouble, real trouble. Frilly skirt? Mm. Yes, I'm compounding my error. Does dairy-free carnivore need to be concerned about calcium? Meat, seafood, eggs provide enough? Yep. Plenty of populations that don't consume, the difference is they consume more, you have to consume more protein in order to uptake more calcium. So that's the only difference. But no. Scotty, how are you, mate? Hi, how are you? Would the Maasai get taurine from fresh blood as well? Yeah, they would. They'd get it from dairy. It's got taurine, not a lot, but they'll get from that. They get it from the meat. They do tend to remember what Mary said. They occasionally have, when they take the animals out to pasture, they'll have some milk, but primarily they consume more of the meat. They're not. Yes, they are pastoralists, but they do. Their main food is the meat plus dairy and blood on top of that, which covers the electrolytes but also covers the taurine and stuff like that. There would be in the blood. That definitely would be a source. I'm aware of that because it's in our blood as well, but I'm not sure how much would be in that I don't know. Maybe in a cow's blood there's more taurine or less taurine. I don't really know. I haven't really checked the blood concentrations in different species. It'd be an interesting video, actually. I'll have to look into that. Add it to my list, Scotty, to things to investigate. Taurine levels in the blood of different animals. And we covered that. So we'll move on. I think she thanked Lukey somewhere. You did thank, so thank you. Me too, Harry. After hearing and speaking about taurine, I've begun taking it since April. At this moment, I'm much happier human being. I'm at 4 teaspoons, 20 grams a day. Thanks, you. Yeah. Don't do that level for months and months and months. Slowly come down and increase your meat consumption, and you should basically normalize and regulate that sort of stuff, in that regard. So I usually only recommend to 10 grams per day, but some people seem to require more until they sort their conditions out. So if you're getting good results, happy for you. But remember, do taper off, because some people sometimes have genetics where they can bioaccumulate. That can be sorted out with, if you're eating animal foods and getting enough choline will methylate any excess. So it's less of a problem in that regard. But if you've got a lot of issues to fix, going higher, can be good. I did higher doses as well, because I had fatty liver. I had some fat. I had, like my heart, when I had my bypass surgery, I had fibrosis in my heart, my left lung, my liver, and some of my other organs had also some fibrosis and some fatty deposits. And so choline does export fat out and gets it mobilized and stuff like that, plus the taurine to fix a lot of the fibrosis. Now I've got zero fibrosis from my heart, and I've been discharged by the cardiologist, and my heart is in a better state now. He was surprised. He said most people get worse, because they do. After you've had a first heart condition and heart damage from heart attack, or you usually basically get worse and worse and worse. You don't get better. But that's because most of the people are still eating the same crap. That's why they get worse. They're not getting the nutrients, and they're making the changes that they need to fix their heart. And also the taurine levels, because everybody's eating kibble. They're getting very little animal product in them. But it did help me break down my fibrosis throughout my body. and really improve my general state. So, yeah, I'm way better. So, no more cardiologist for me, which is good. I still need to do the scan. I forgot. Need to go and need to remind myself. I need to go and do the scan on my lungs to see. It has come down from the complete glassing and my doctor GP fearing that I may get cancer in my lung. Now it's down to the last scan was about 18 or 19%. So most of it, 80 odd plus percent, has gone. Now it's a question of has it completely. I do seem to have far more like lung endurance capacity. Like I'll jog up to the 9th floor in my building and seem to be able to do that without sort of even before I was getting a bit of shortness of breath. Now I get none, which is interesting. So I think my lungs are much better now. Whether they've gone to complete zero in terms of fibrosis, I will find that out soon, which I bloody have to book that in. Try and remember to do it this week. Keep on forgetting. Yes, another session in the scanner. Yep, that's the one. It is on Amazon as well. If you can't get it on iHerb, because some people in North America can't get it on iHerb, don't know why. So it's what is it called again? The one that I get for Dad, which is you're eating enough meat. Why are you concerned? Why do you need leucine if you're eating enough meat? God, you want to muscle up, do you? Is that it? See if I. Yeah. This is the brand. They're sold out. Just check one of the other websites to see if you can find it. That's the company. Oops. Oops. What is it doing? Stop doing that. That is annoying. So that's the one that I get for Dad. So anyway, and that's the one you can also buy locally. So you can actually get that at Planet Max in the city, which is a bodybuilding business in the across from the GPO. It's in the bus mall in Hobart, and that's where Dad goes and picks up his leucine and a few other things. So yes, definitely. They should ask you, shouldn't they, Jared? Northern Hemisphere supremacy. They should ask you. You guys basically up there get snowed in and all sorts of things. Sundown at 8:30 p.m. Well, you're right now. Yeah. Well, you're in summer. That's why. But in winter, you guys get snooting. We don't get that sort of. We get, yeah. Then you can go skiing. So there are advantages if you get snowed in. Dom's there. G'day, Dom. And obviously, did I say good hello to my dear friend Llama? They're all the same, mate. They're all the same. They're pushing all the same, or just slightly nuanced a bit here or there, but it's all the same. It's not, the main things that humans are concerned about, which is the energy crisis that's coming, the food crisis that's coming, and a whole lot of other things, which they've upended everything, the way they've actually mismanaged things. Yes, our dear woke future. I remember the old days when people thought Tristan was crazy for sounding the alarm that was coming for meat. Yes, exactly. They did. I'm still subscribing to Tristan. I've still been subscribing for some time because I think we all could see that I just wasn't as vocal. But yeah, in that regard. And because my channel is more focused on dealing with health issues and stuff like that, as you know, Jared, I sometimes go on a bit of a tangent on politics, and other things like that. But and that's what I'll do this week, and that that's a one-off. So I don't do it on a regular thing, and I don't do any orthodoxy things either. With Tristan does a lot of orthodoxy things, which is good, which is fine. He's got his own niche. I do more of a, related to health issues sort of niche. That's my niche. But these other things I do enjoy. I do get involved. And for those people, not all my subscribers will enjoy that sort of stuff. That's fine. I understand. Turn up. You may hear or find out something interesting, or things that you won't find out or hear anywhere else because they're not being discussed. I'm listening to people that even basically are know other people in NATO, military people that they're talking to and getting information that's not really out there that people don't hear. So I get all sorts of sources. So you got to drop in and ask questions and listen to some of the stuff that I'll be bringing up. So all sorts of things that are happening, crazy things in the background. I know. Let me know if you want me to send you a link if you want to come on. That is, because I know with your work and it's in through the day, the regular days of the week, and so it may not be easy in that regard. You may only be able to listen in while working and not be able to participate, which is you're participating only at that level, which is understandable. Yes, hit the like button, please. Or if you're a Vagoon who can't actually leave a comment at the moment because I've disabled only people that are subscribed to me, but you would still like to show your disgust with me, please hit that dislike. It all counts. I'll take that as well from a Vagoon. Yeah, I'll be basically downloading it and actually as well after. So just to make sure that it doesn't get pulled. If it does get pulled, then I'll actually put it up and just make a link where people can just view it from somewhere else. So yeah, could happen. That's a possibility. You know what, YouTube, they're not as They've eased off a bit recently. And I suspect they've done that because, with the Elon Musk effect, as I said earlier, so it's yes, that sort of stuff. Oops, overshot. Oh, you mean choline? They do have a choline product as well. But I actually go for this other one for choline. I can only get it on Amazon, this one. But this is the choline that when I'm not eating eggs, this is the one that I consume. They do make a leucine as well, this company. So if you're doing it they do make a number of other supplements. I've never tried their taurine, so I can't tell you. I don't know whether they even produce taurine, but anyway. I just get the basic stuff, the choline bitrate. You've got to get the same level. So if I do 2 grams, which 2 grams is equivalent to 1 gram because it's bound. So to get 1 gram. And then I get some from the, if I've had some alcohol indiscretions, I may take a bit more, like 3 or 4 grams to mitigate some of the fat issues of the alcohol, the damaging. When I've been a naughty boy, I'll take my choline and then I'll spank myself. Yeah, look, there's a lot of anecdotal. There's sort of a lot of animal studies in that regard. So I would say, thanks, Richard. Appreciate it. Probably not a good idea. I've had sparkling water, but I usually just use spring water, which is not carbonated. Carbonated is a problem. Even my probiotic stuff that I get with my the kombucha stuff and all that is not carbonated. Not that I don't have occasionally carbonated stuff. That's okay. But if you're doing it frequently, not a good idea. Oops. Yeah, that's what I would be thinking as well. Thanks, Richard. Appreciate it, mate. That will cover a nice big steak. The way the prices are going up now with inflation. So could be worse. Oh, okay. So bulletproof coffee was in Ethiopia. You're sure about that? I thought we Greeks invented everything, or the Indians. It's either us or them. You should know that, HD. Okay, commercialized. Fair enough. See, Llama, it's your back. What are you commercializing? Raw milk. That's not going to work. Dom, good to see you, mate. Yes. Some of the spring waters, like the Italian ones, are 148 or 149, where the Alpine stuff from France is 1 46. So the higher you go, the elevation, the lower the deuterium because of the UV factor. I don't know about the Swiss Alps. I know that was the French Alps, the Swiss Alps. Yeah, I have to look into the Swiss Alps, what their products are, if I can get information. Sometimes hard to find some information like that. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Yes, yes. Even coffee's going up. Coffee inflation as well. I did buy, they had on special the week, what was it? 2 weeks ago, I think it was. They had the big jars of coffee, the espresso. They had it cheaper, and I grabbed one. So, yes, cover my future costs. Yeah, everything's bloody going up, as you know. And you guys in Europe, it's even worse in Europe. So, yeah, not a good situation that is happening at the moment. And yeah, I sort of think that things are definitely going to get worse. It's the reason why I want to make this, do the live streams in the midweek to really cover some of these issues that people need to sort of keep an eye out on for their own well-being. There, you know, and I think the elites are going to use this to minimize other things as well. So it's vastly worse in Bahrain. Okay, food inflation, stuff like that. Shit. Yeah, it depends on if you're a commodity producer, you're going to be less susceptible. Like Russia is a commodity producer. Australia is a commodity producer. New Zealand again. The US again has a big commodity, even though it's got a whole lot of other sectors of an economy, it's still a big commodity producer. Small commodity producers are going to be much harder hit when it comes to energy and food inflation. Yeah. Yeah, it's not good. Oops. Yes, you've been moving around, haven't you? You're in the UAE last time we spoke. Dom is a man, a traveling man. Where do the neutrons go? How do the mitochondria get rid of them? Look, eventually what happens is you will dilute. It's a sort of a dilution. We think it's a dilution thing. So when you add more deuterium, low deuterium water, it seems that eventually you get this dilution effect, and the enzymes can cope with a lower amount. The threshold comes down of the neutrons, and they can actually remove those because it's a rate limiting thing. You've got enzymes that are taking out the deuterium component ions. So the deuterium ions, that is. So it's really, you've got the rate limiting effect of the enzymes on the one hand that are affecting that, and then the quantity inside the mitochondrial matrix. So if you can reduce that threshold, because remember, you pump the stuff through into the inner mitochondrial membrane, and so that goes in there and then gets forced through the ATP synthase, comes back into the matrix type things. At that point, you can clear, if you can change the composition of that water, yeah, you can actually reduce that sort of stuff. And you've got this water production and stuff that's being pulled out as well. So, you know, yeah, it's how long, God, really hard to know exactly. It's never been calculated. I don't think you can calculate it because you still need energy to remove something. And how damaged your mitochondria, my mitochondria, Richard's mitochondria are, they're going to be at a different level depending on your age. If you're younger, much better, you can clear it out compared to older. There's so much variability. It's energy dependent and enzymatically dependent in terms of the rate limit of the enzymes to do it. So it's those two factors, and the third factor is obviously the concentration gradient within the matrix inside that middle part where the Krebs cycle comes right, lipolysis and glycolysis come right through into the matrix, that middle part, which is the matrix is called the mitochondria, where the Krebs cycle is the water production. So it's not, I can't give you a really 100% answer on that. So it's going to vary. That's why I usually say my deuterium depleting protocol is sort of get the water in for those people who've got cancer and stuff like that, in order to flush some of that stuff, dilute it out. And by putting less in, you're giving the body enough time to start removing the deuterium out of the mitochondria. And then on the other hand, you're lowering melatonin, cortisol at night. You're with taurine, you magnifying melatonin. Melatonin goes in, repairs the electron chains, and so slowly oxidative phosphorylation starts improving. The water content of deuterium is being eliminated, so you can actually then start producing more ATP energy. The more energy, then you can do more things to repair and stuff like that. Ultimately, it's shifting to a species appropriate diet and more fat for hydration that eventually over time will fix these problems. We're just using some of these biohacks to sort of accelerate. It's more, let's do this so we can actually get quicker results and clear out. Because you remember that Ron Rosdale had a saying, even though I disagree with him on mTOR, but had a saying about it's a fight between damage and repair, and damage wins in the end. And so that's really the level, and the length of time and all that can vary because of that level. If you've got more inflammatory cytokines because of more senescence, you're going to have more damage. And so it's a struggle to try. So the quicker you clean up things in your diet, and the quicker you take the things out that are causing the damage, the more, and some of the supplemental assistance you give to the body, the more capacity you give to the body to recover or shift to a much healthier state. How long that will take between people can vary because of a lot of factors, as you can understand. So I hope that sort of makes sense. Exactly. It's got nutrients. It's not going to harm you. Exactly the composition, I can't remember now. It's a long time since I looked at it, but it does have benefits. And all animal foods have benefits. So, with ice cream, no, it doesn't like water. That's true. Yeah. Dad puts it in his yogurt because he has a bit of yogurt every night. That's his like little evening thing, and he puts the leucine in the yogurt. His evening taurine in the yogurt, and and sort of mixes it up. So yeah, but he does that in the evening, and it's with yogurt, which is much easier. Yeah, it does definitely. Leucine does not mix in water. You gotta find some other method to get it in. Yeah, it's like a powder. It's really hard to, so yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. I forgot about that. That is a real issue. So you gotta, it's the reason why, I think I've said in the past with older people, you put it like my dad does in yogurt. You put it in their yogurt. You put some leucine, some taurine, give it to them, as an evening snack or whatever, and they get it in their system. It calms them down. It brings down, normalize their cortisol, so they get better sleep as well, better repair for these elderly people, plus better muscle protein synthesis. So it all helps, getting them moving in the right direction. With leucine and citrulline, it's usually with citrulline half an hour before, in that regard. I prefer taking leucine after the workout. So citrulline before, about half an hour. With taurine, you can take, in order to get it in all tissue, it's 45 minutes to 90 minutes. And it depends on your circulation. So how good is your circulation? So if you're older, I would take it about up to 90 minutes. If you're a young person, up to 45 minutes. So it depends on, if middle age, probably at 60 minutes for taurine as a before your workout. Citrulline, half an hour. And also for hanky panky, half an hour before, for L-citrulline for vasodilation. And for leucine, I will take it after, in the first probably hour. It's between 45 minutes and 2 hours, some people say, but I would probably take it no longer than an hour after a workout, the leucine, so it's the point that I want to, and then after that, about 90 minutes later, I would have a big, messy, bloody meal after that workout, 90 minutes later. So to magnify the sort of muscle protein synthesis, and also with that leucine, I would also add some taurine as well for the myostatin inhibition to magnify the effects. I've actually done a video talking about improving the immune system, the naive T cells. Yes, it does. And vitamin D. There is a video. Go and check my COVID playlist and you'll actually find that information. Anyway, guys, I'm about to pull the pin and get the bugger out of here. So I've got to be somewhere else. So I'm just going to quickly jump through these. So, whoops, where am I? And I'll see most of you people, some of you people this evening, depending on. Shit. 3 times the price. God, that is expensive. God. Unless the Kiwis are keeping them for animal husbandry. You know what I mean, Dom? Yeah, the Gulf Cooperation Council states, yes, that is true. That is exactly what they're called. What would you do if a loved one has dementia? I'd put them on a meat-only diet. That's what I'd do. And I'd definitely get the taurine up, the phosphatidylserine up, the choline up, and the, things like some fish as well in their diet. That's what I'd basically do. The problem is, if you've got dementia, you've got quite a bit of damage. Very hard to repair some of that damage, unfortunately. But choline and taurine help a lot. What choline does is it actually breaks down all the glycating effect, simple human. So the glycating effect of those proteins, very important, clears out a lot of that glycation. That means, and also folds proteins correctly. Misfolded proteins are what cause a lot of the health problems. Taurine refolds proteins. That is a substance in meat refolds proteins in the proper way to eliminate the problems with folding, most diseases of civilization are basically protein misfolding in the body, and that's because of nutrients and the stuff that we put in ourselves and other things that we do to ourselves. So, and choline actually can clear beta amyloid as well, so they work synergistically. So yes, and there is a version of choline that is actually what is it called, CDP choline, that actually is better for absorption into the brain, and there's another one as well, but I can't remember it. So do grab the not the one that I actually put up, the other one that actually has those. That's right, alpha GP. Was it? Is that the one? No, it's not that. There's another one. Where is it? There's this one, but there's also a new one, but I can't remember the damn name of it. This is the one for people with things like dementia and stuff like that, and that one there for Alzheimer's, dementia, blah blah blah. But there's another one. It's a newer one which seems to have higher bioavailability. I'm trying to remember what it's bloody called. If anybody can remember, I just can't remember at the moment. And the other one is the phosphatidylserine as well, which is really important. Oh, that's right. Yeah, thanks, Simple. Yeah. No, not that one. We're talking about choline here, not thiamine. Talking about choline, not thiamine. And phosphatidylserine is really important for the brain as well. Phosphatidylserine. That's the one that they used in the Israeli studies to turn off certain genes, like neurological genes. So that what's the dosage of that? 400. I think you have to go double that, up to about 800, double the dose. So double serving of phosphatidylserine. Yeah, exactly, Richard. That is Elliot's stuff. We get more than enough in the diet. If you want more thiamine, just eat more pork, tuna, and stuff like that, and you'll get those things. You don't need to supplement. Good to see you. Ah, yes. Great vasodilator, especially if you want to do a bit of hanky-panky in the bed. Also, Robert Lussick gave 6 to 8 points about the benefits of fiber. Speaking about recently on topic, thought the Bart opportunity to put him right. Yeah, exactly. Let Bart know. He does all those sort of videos. I don't. Yeah, Bart would love that. He'd enjoy that, definitely. And I think the rest of us would as well get a few laughs. You know, while he's got some good research, old Lustig, on fructose and stuff like that, when it comes to some of this other stuff, I mean, bloody hell, you know. And yes, what Richard said further down, no, you don't need it. Get it from there. I don't think that's what it's called. It's a different thing altogether. But for now, do that, because I can't remember the other one. It's a newer one. This is not as pricey, so it's probably this one here that I put is probably more affordable to do long term. So just do that, the alpha GPC, but get the phosphatidylserine and double the dose for that, and you'll get better. She'll get better results. Taurine's very important as well. Get the taurine, we've talked about it profusely, the one on iHerb in that regard. So yes, so grab that, and I'm going to blast out of here, and I'll see most people in about 4 hours from now for the Eurasian live stream. And what result did we get on the thing? Okay, so it's Tuesday, guys. It's either, and then Tuesday, Wednesday. Tuesday was the highest with 26%. Wednesday was 21%. I'll probably have to do this on the evening one as well, and then average the two out. So anyway, there you go. We'll see, and we'll make the announcement on the evening one. Well, you'll probably see it because I'll put it up anyway. So anyway, see you, Sammy. Take care. And I am blasting out of here. Thanks, Richard. Dom, always a pleasure. Thanks, mate. And please hit the like button if you haven't. And I'm out of here. Take care. See you guys.